Chapter 91. After autumn, the weather became cold. It was indeed chilly to skateboard outside at this hour. When she entered the internet cafe, Fujio straightened her jacket collar. This young man had been here when the machine broke last time, so the boss of the internet cafe had a good impression of Fujio. Another half an hour this time? The boss had a cigarette in his mouth and was fiddling with something with his head down. You don't have to pay, it's open over there. Go play by yourself. Fujio found the boss interesting the first time she met him, so she came to this internet cafe again. I'll play for a long time this time until midnight. Give me a good machine. What are you doing? Playing games? The boss raised his eyes. His chin was quite handsome. Fujio replied with a half smile, but her eyes were cold. Alright then. Number 19 in Zone A, what game will you be playing later? I heard that a good team is going to play Hero today. You can watch. Fujio laughed. I'm watching this live broadcast. The boss didn't quite understand. He only felt that the young man's handsome face was especially cold today. The internet cafe wasn't small. Fujio sat down along the queue, turned on the computer and logged into the game. Then she glanced at the rankings. Using the code implantation, she located the positions of those three people. Liang Shuguang, Zhang Yingqiao and Yesu. These three used their nicknames when they played games, but now that they were signed by a company, they used their real names to attract fans in the live broadcast in order to attract more fans. Fujio glanced at the time on the computer. There was still half an hour before the live broadcast. That was enough time for her to break through the perimeter of the interview. Fujio narrowed her eyes. Ka-ka-ta-ta. A pair of fair and slender hands danced on the white keyboard, and the rhythmic tapping sounded like a lively piece of music. This was what the boss of the internet cafe saw when he walked over with the lollipop the young man wanted. Good hand speed, but what are you doing? Fujio quickly switched to the game page and curled up her thin lips. Nothing, doing some English homework. Homework on the computer? The boss found it interesting, so he chatted with Fujio a bit more. So you play Hero too. There's a competition in the internet cafe and if you win you get a prize. Do you want to sign up? Fujio unwrapped a lollipop and held it in her mouth. She smiled lazily. I'm not good at it. That's a pity. I think his hand speed is pretty good. The boss shook his head and walked away. In his heart he was muttering, why does that English sound so weird? Could it be that he hadn't gone to school for so many years that he couldn't keep up with the times? Now that there was no one around, Fujio opened the code window again. Her silver hair moved slightly, and she coolly hacked into the platform room where she was going to broadcast. Just as she was about to move, her phone rang. It was a WeChat message from Almighty Qin. Where are you? Internet cafe. Fujio didn't even think before she replied with 2 words. Chinamo sat on the office chair and arched a brow. I'm asking where your game is. I won't be farming today. I have something to do. Fujio typed very fast. Chinmo's deep eyes dimmed. Did someone offend you again? Is that why you went to the internet cafe to deal with them? Just like Director Zhang last time? Fujio tilted her head and replied with a voice message. Brother Imo, don't talk nonsense. I'm just looking for someone to play a game with. Chapter 92. Fujio looked at the increasing number of viewers on the live broadcast platform and she smiled. It would be great if Brother Imo could come. Hearing the deep voice, Chinamo knew something was up. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He tapped on the keyboard and entered the game. Following the code the youngster gave him, he automatically came to a live broadcast platform. There were 3 youngsters on the screen wearing the new team uniform and they were being interviewed online. I heard that the 3 of you just changed companies. How are the benefits this time? The fans are very concerned about the benefits you mentioned on Weibo. Liang Shuguang was the most handsome among them, so he was the one who mainly spoke. He wore headphones and sat in front of the computer. When the camera turned to him, he smiled and said, the new company is more than 10 times better than the previous company that cheated people. Those who like us can rest assured. In the future, we will work hard to present a better condition for everyone. I've heard about the previous company and it was really not that good. To increase the exposure, the host didn't end the topic. Liang Shuguang said yes, then shrugged his shoulders. There's nothing we can do about it. The boss is from the countryside. He likes to yell and shout at people. I think the people in the team can't stand it, so they left. A boss who doesn't know how to respect others won't last long. The host closed the book and smiled. But you guys have met a talent scout, and your future development will definitely get better and better. Liang Shuguang also smiled. I think so too. Okay, let's stop talking. I'm sure the fans and friends are waiting anxiously. The host pretended to be excited and said, "My colleagues were just saying that the three of you are all masters on the rankings, and you are worshipped by many people. The previous company didn't know how to advertise, which delayed your development. Now you can finally open our eyes. Now it's time for the Almighties to enter the game. Fans, if you have any questions, you can ask them on the live broadcast platform. Remember to send gifts." As soon as the host finished speaking, the live broadcast platform was flooded by one person. It was Fujio. She was wearing black headphones and her silver hair was shining. "Since you are the Almighties, do you dare to accept a match on the spot?" How could such a message come out? This was not following the script at all. The host furrowed his brows and subconsciously turned to look at the director. However, the director gestured for her to continue the broadcast. What was even more strange was that he didn't know if there was a problem with the network. Their platform seemed to have been controlled by someone, and all the other fans couldn't say anything at this moment. Thus, the words that resembled a battle invitation dominated the entire screen like a cold mountain night. There was no one who didn't know what the words webcast meant. If he were to reject her now, he would be losing face before he even made his debut. And looking at that avatar, it seemed to be a newbie. What an arrogant fellow. Since he wanted to be beaten up, he would fulfill his wish. Chapter 93. Coach Chinamo was among the audience watching the live stream. With a cigarette between his slender fingers, he loosened his tie when he saw the two words. He sat on the high-end leather chair with his legs slightly crossed and a cold smile on his face. Someone at this level was qualified to coach his little brother? Thinking of the clean and elegant young man before, and then looking at Liang Shuguang, who had a smug look on his face, Chinamo instantly felt that his little brother was many times better. It would be even better if he could change his flirting habit. Of course, Almighty Qin didn't realize that his current thinking was a typical brother-con. In the internet cafe, Fujio was wearing her black headphones. She smiled evilly and replied with one word, "You." "Me." Liang Shuguang laughed even louder. "My dear fan, I advise you to choose the other two. If I fight with you, your HP will be depleted very quickly." Fujio held the lollipop in her mouth and sneered. "How would you know without fighting?" "What? You don't dare to take it?" "My dear fan, I'm giving you a chance that won't be too embarrassing. Since you don't cherish this chance, come on." Liang Shuguang moved his fingers and entered the hero. Instantly, two game characters appeared on the screen facing each other. Fujio's account couldn't be any more new, but if Liang Shuguang had taken this match seriously and looked at her record, he wouldn't have been so full of himself. A new account had completed 29 first clears in a short period of 1 month. This kind of data would be top-notch in any club. But Liang Shuguang only saw that this player named Spade Z didn't even have any decent clothes on him. He only had an inconspicuous bronze sword on his back, and it was a gift from the grocery store after learning the skill. Liang Shuguang's disdain deepened. "Friend, your equipment is too lousy. Do you need me to let you have a few moves first?" "No need." After Fujio typed, she spat out the lollipop in her mouth and skillfully picked a chocolate-flavored one into her mouth. She tilted her head and smiled. Do professional players talk so much during a match? Liang Shuguang narrowed his eyes. Was she shameless? Hey, in that case, let's begin. Liang Shuguang's sneer could be seen by everyone watching the live broadcast. Zhang Yingqiao and Yesu encouraged him. "Shuguang, he's just an amateur. Just teach him a little, don't take it too seriously." "Alright, give me a minute. Once everyone settled down, we'll live stream the dungeon." Liang Shuguang confidently put on his headphones and placed his fingers on the keyboard, waiting for the game's 3-second countdown. He wanted to stun his opponent first and then use a few moves to destroy him. This way it would be more interesting to watch on the live broadcast. However, what he did not expect was that just as he moved his index finger, before he could even use his proudest gaming skill, he saw a flash of light across the computer screen. His HP bar dropped at lightning speed. He did not even see his opponent's movement clearly before he fell heavily to the ground in a spray of blood. In the internet cafe, Fujio was waving her mouse and typing on the keyboard. Her movements were beautiful, and she didn't even give her opponent a chance to revive. She used another big move. Chapter 94. Lost? He actually lost in front of his fans? Liang Sudong's frozen expression was transmitted to every corner of the country through the live broadcast. How long had it been? 10 seconds? 20 seconds? Definitely less than half a minute. And the result? Liang Shuguang, who was yelling about teaching someone a lesson, was killed in seconds as soon as the game started. Everyone who was watching the live broadcast was shocked. Many players in the internet cafes even stopped playing games and stood up to watch the big screen in the internet cafes. They were crazily scrolling through the screen, and that fiery scene couldn't be controlled at all. Who the hell is this guy? He's so handsome, so handsome. Wait a minute, I think I can leave a message. Quick, ask who he is. Is he from some professional league? Absolutely not. Why do I feel like his game name is a bit familiar? *CK. I remember, Spade Z. He's the Spade Z who swept the first clears in Zone C. Why do I feel like Spade Z hid his achievements on purpose? You don't say. I feel the same way, ha. My big Spade is so two-faced. What new king of professional league? He's so weak in front of me, the great Spade. He just said that he would let his opponent win, but he didn't even use any skills. What an embarrassing slap to the face. The boss of the internet cafes couldn't compare with these youngsters. Although he liked playing games, he wasn't that crazy about idols. When he walked over with the Coke that the customer ordered, he accidentally looked at the silver-haired young man's computer and was stunned. The young man who said that he wasn't good at playing hero had pure black headphones on his head and a lollipop in his mouth. His side profile was so handsome that he looked like he walked out of a comic book. He was in a one-on-one battle with someone in the arena. With a shake of the mouse, the intense and beautiful operation stopped abruptly, and the whole screen was filled with the silver victory sign. He didn't look like someone who didn't know how to play at all. Instead, he looked like a master among masters. The boss walked over and wanted to take a closer look. But after he saw the game character on the screen clearly, his eyes shook violently. But, Spade Z? Fujio looked like she had just gotten out of a fight. She looked back fiercely with a lollipop in her mouth. She put her slender fingers on her lips and made a shushing gesture with an evil smile. The boss was really shocked. He looked at the young man's androgynous face, and then looked at the 200-inch LCD screen hanging on the wall of his internet cafe, which was still playing the live broadcast. The excited voice echoed throughout the internet cafe. Every gamer deeply worshipped Spade Z at this moment. That beautiful and arrogant movement, that explosive strike, that elegant move that struck the enemy in an inch of space. But this godly player, who had been repeatedly picked by professional teams, was actually sitting in his internet cafe and playing games. What's more, he was using a machine that cost 5 yuan per hour. He had always been treated as a high school kid who only knew how to play single-player games. Who would have thought? Excitement, astonishment, and vexation filled his chest. In the end, the boss couldn't take it anymore. He clutched his chest and said, "I'm going to have a cup of cold water to calm myself down." Chapter 95. The arrogant sentence dominated the entire screen. The live broadcast platform was almost flooded by the players. They were fascinated by Spade Z's strength. He could kill you without any equipment. Liang Sudong's already pale face was stained with a layer of heavy anger after seeing this sentence. His fingers held the mouse tightly. If it wasn't for the fact that he was still doing a live broadcast, he would have already started cursing. This guy was obviously here to make things difficult for him, and he even hid the victory. He did it on purpose. The host also saw the suspicion in this and quickly spoke up for Liang Sudong. Even the network speed was affected during the live broadcast. Instead, the audience who came to challenge benefited from it. Although this result is a bit unexpected, it's not difficult to see the character of our almighty Shuguang. He is very considerate of the fans and even gave up the victory. Shouldn't such a player get more love from you? Just from the host's words, it was obvious that she didn't understand games at all. In that match just now, there was no problem with the network speed, and it wasn't because Liang Sudong gave up the victory. It was because he was crushed from the beginning to the end without any power to fight back. The people watching the live broadcast were the real players. As soon as the host finished speaking, a series of words appeared on the platform. How can the host say that he gave up in such an obvious situation? Where's her professional ethics? Shameless. Did the host take someone's money? I don't want to watch this platform anymore. What professional player? If he lost, he lost. Why does the host have to speak up for him? The host saw that the bombardment was aimed at her and gestured to the director. But this time, the director's reaction was completely different. Through the glass, a large poster was erected. Interview that Spade Z. Hurry up. Such a heated discussion, it must not stop. The host had indeed taken money from the mistress of the Fu family. Now that she was being treated like this, she felt uncomfortable. Who knows if he found someone to play for him or if he used to cheat? Liang Shuguang said coldly, "You know we are doing a live broadcast, but you still came to challenge us. Do you want to be famous? Good publicity. The host pretended to be surprised. A plugin? That makes sense. I've heard of this Spade Z before. I heard that he swept Zone C as soon as he came out, and he used a new account. Logically speaking, it's impossible for him to complete the first kill mission. There's a high chance that he used external software. Chinamo had just poured himself a glass of red wine. Before he could sit down with the cork in his hand, he saw this conversation. His deep eyes gradually turned cold. He could take care of his younger brother. Since when was it someone else's turn to interrupt? Moreover, he knew that guy's hand speed better than anyone else. Cheat code? Who was he trying to humiliate? Did he think his brother was the same as these idiots? Chinamo raised his head and took a sip of red wine. He freed one hand and leaned over, typing a few words on the keyboard. Since you guys are so doubtful, have a round with me. I won't bring any equipment either. Such a cold sentence was sent out. All of a sudden, the live broadcast screen was stuck for a few tenths of a second. Even Fujio felt that moment of pause. She had clearly released her authority, but at that moment no one spoke. It was as if the whole world had fallen silent. Right after that. Chapter 96. Almighty Qin. It's really Almighty Qin. Almighty Qin's letter of challenge. Holy *T. This is not a dream. I can watch Almighty Qin play live again. I want to see his hands. The internet cafe where Fujio was also affected. The players watching the big screen were all petrified the moment Chinamo appeared. Then they all screamed excitedly. The whole internet cafe was bustling as if it was New Year's Eve. Except for Fujio, who was still sitting in front of her computer, all the other computers were empty. Everyone was looking at the TV screen with shining eyes, yelling for the boss to turn up the volume. Chinamo, Chinamo, Chinamo. Just looking at those two words was enough to make one's blood boil. Except for the annual All-Stars live broadcast, Almighty Qin would appear on the live broadcast platform. Today. He actually came. The audience were just onlookers after all, and the one who was really scared was Liang Shuguang. Almighty Qin sent that sentence for him to see. How could his skills be better than Almighty Qin's? He might even die more miserably than before. The host was also shocked when she saw the name of the game, and then women's thoughts started to run wild. She didn't play games, but in Jianghu City, there was no woman who didn't want to be close to young Master Qin. The host was lost in thought, thinking about how to talk to young Master Qin later. Finally, the director backstage couldn't help it anymore. He walked over, pulled the host back and raised the microphone. I think the audience is in the same mood as me. You all want Almighty Qin to make a move, right? The director said what everyone was thinking. Now they didn't care about Liang Shuguang anymore. They just hoped that Almighty Qin would turn on the camera. The number of views on the live broadcast platform instantly reached 10 million, and many media outlets started to enter. The agents of other clubs even called the players at this time. Go on the live broadcast. Chinamo wants to PK. You guys watch. Rather than asking them to watch, it was better to ask them to learn. Almighty Qin never PK unless he led his team to fight in a competition. This was a rare opportunity in 100 years. At the same time, Feng Yi, who was still talking about his next sponsorship, received the news. He put down his glass and looked at the CEO of his partner seriously. Do you have XX live broadcast software on your phone? Almighty young Master Qin, my ancestor, do you know how much your endorsement fee is? He just casually appeared on the live streaming platform. Secretary Liang didn't dare to look at his CEO's face anymore. To be honest, who would go on a live broadcast to pick a fight over a younger brother? Young Master Qin was definitely the first in history. He was too protective. No, he couldn't let his imagination run wild. The CEO is straight. It was just that he grew up alone. Now that he had a younger brother, he more or less had the tendency of a younger brother complex. That's right, it's a sibling complex. Chinamo didn't care about the impact he had caused. He had always been known for being domineering and aloof. He just raised his eyebrows and typed 5 words. Are you going to fight or not? There wasn't even a punctuation mark, and his tone was so cold that it could freeze people to death. Liang Shuguang sat in front of the computer. Even though the heat in the broadcasting room was turned on, he still couldn't help but tremble. Meeting Almighty Qin as soon as he debuted would only cause him to be one-sidedly destroyed. At that time, people would only remember his cowardly appearance and no one would like him anymore. Chapter 97. Liang Shuguang desperately wanted to retreat, but the director pressed his shoulder hard. Of course, Shuguang, it's your honor to have Almighty Qin guiding you. What honor? How could it be an honor? If he really fought with Almighty Qin, he would never be able to get rid of the word ugly in his career. Director Liang Shuguang still wanted to say something. But the director cut him off and whispered in his ear, if you don't fight this time, don't ever think about fighting again. The intention of the threat was obvious. The platform looked at the traffic benefits. If he didn't fight and Almighty Qin didn't make a move, how could the ratings soar? What? Do you really think you're a god? Your boss didn't poach you to make you lose money. Continue broadcasting and you'll be rewarded later. Liang Shuguang finally understood that after entering the new company, he could no longer do whatever he wanted like before. In the eyes of the new boss, players like them were just chess pieces. These people wouldn't consider his future, they only cared about the benefits in front of them. Liang Shuguang sat back down with a defeated face. After logging into the game, he saw the godlike character in front of him. He clenched his teeth and wanted to make his last resistance. However, Almighty Qin's attack wasn't as fierce as Spade Z's. Instead, he froze his body so that he couldn't even move. He let him bleed bit by bit. Liang Shuguang thought that it would only take him a few seconds to lose face. But Almighty Qin seemed to be playing with him, making him embarrassed for 3 whole minutes. In these 3 minutes he was as ugly as he could get. The laughter coming from the screen was so piercing. In the end, Liang Shuguang couldn't take it anymore. He took off his headphones and threw them on the table. This way of dying was even more pathetic than before. After all, the Qin family was a warlord. No matter how handsome and elegant Qin Imo was, he was ruthless in his attacks. After killing him, Xiao Qin typed a line of words with a calm expression. Look at how slow my movements are. Do I look like I'm using a cheat? That was a slap in the face. Liang Shuguang's expression froze, and he had to smile along with the director. Many of Almighty Qin's fans heard their idol's words. Don't play if you don't know how to play. You accuse others of cheating when you get insta-killed. Do you think such a player is fit to be a professional player? He's indeed unworthy. This time it was someone from another team who spoke up. The name of the great god was clearly hanging there. From this, it could be seen how many pro players were online on the streaming platform. The preview traffic had reached an unprecedented peak. The broadcasting director asked someone to switch the picture to the screen, and the excitement in his eyes was so obvious. Liang Shuguang felt extremely embarrassed and wanted to get up and leave. What he didn't expect was that this wasn't the end. A clear and mischievous voice came through the microphone, with the unique chuckle of a teenager. What? You want to leave? Liang Shuguang, do you think that I will let you go at this point? What did you say just now? You came from the countryside and liked to be noisy, right? When you said this, you seemed to have forgotten that you also came from the countryside. Back then, you were so poor that you could only eat instant noodles in the internet cafe. It was the boss that you looked down on the most who recruited you into the company. He took care of your food and accommodation. When you didn't have any talent, he treated you well. Chapter 98. As soon as Fujio said that, the live broadcast platform went into an uproar immediately. Even the staff next to him looked at Liang Shuguang in surprise. It seemed that no one expected the inside story to be like this. Liang Shuguang didn't have the face to look at the camera anymore. He tried his best to cover his face with his hands. However, Fujio's voice didn't stop. She just sat in the noisy crowd with her legs slightly crossed, like a king in control of the whole scene. Under her silver hair was a thin half-smile. While everyone was staring at the big screen and watching the live broadcast, no one knew that in the corner of the internet cafe, a handsome young man wearing black headphones was moving his hands and playing with the whole world. Now you know how to be embarrassed? Didn't you just laugh at He Honghua's company for not being good at training people? Liang Shuguang, Zhang Yingqiao, and Yesu, I can tell you now that I am a player under He Corporation. How can it be enough to beat you up just once? Go back and tell your boss that I will slap all her students' faces until they are swollen in the selection contest. As Fujio's voice fell, the live broadcast platform's traffic broke 100 million. It turned out that this wasn't a PK between ordinary fans, but a declaration of war between two teams. The media smelled the scent of gossip, and they swarmed in like a tide. Countless people on the screen asked, which company is He Corporation? Some people were shocked because anyone who had heard of He Corporation knew that it was a company that was about to go bankrupt. Spade Z, who swept Zone C as soon as he debuted, won 29 matches, and defeated a professional player in just 18 seconds. Turned out to be a signed student of this company. They thought a lot about Spade Z's background, but no one expected that this mysterious master actually came from this company. That night, He Honghua's phone exploded with calls from investors. She didn't know what was going on, but she heard the people on the other end shouting fiercely, "Boss He, why didn't you tell me earlier that our company had such a player? Spadesy. If you had told me earlier, would I have withdrawn my investment? I will tear up the contract and we will continue to work together. This time, I will invest another 500,000, okay?" He Honghua looked at her phone in a daze. She still couldn't believe that the investors who had been forcing her to pay back the money wanted to increase their investment, and they even called her Boss He? This was even rarer than a pie falling from the sky. He Honghua's first reaction was that he must be a swindler. How could there be such a good thing in the world? He must be thinking of a way to take away the last bit of money she had left. But the first call was fine. Then she received a total of 8 phone calls. 5 of them were from investors, and the other 3 were from the most famous local media in Jianghu City. They wanted to interview their company's player, whose game name was Spade Z. She had heard of this Spade Z, the almighty who swept through Zone C. But their company didn't have a player named Spade Z. The media even asked her to send a photo to them so that it would be good for their publicity. The key was that she really didn't have such a person on her side. He Honghua was confused. Chapter 99. He Honghua didn't know how to read, let alone how to open the link. In the end, Qin Xiaodong came over and the two of them looked at the computer together. They took the video and watched it from beginning to end. When Qin Xiaodong heard the last part, he couldn't even sit still anymore. He stood up and yelled, "That was so King satisfying. Madam, now the whole country knows what kind of people these 3 are, and no one will support them in the future. They deserve to terminate the contract with us." Spade Z. He Honghua vaguely felt that the voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it before. "Why did he help me?" Qin Xiaodong laughed. "He must have helped you because he saw injustice. Madam, you don't know that these online masters love to turn things around. But we don't have such a person in our company. How am I going to explain when the media calls?" He Honghua was a boss after all, so she had to think more than others. Qin Xiaodong was also troubled. In fact, he didn't understand why Spade Z still said that he was from their company when everything was over. If their company had such a god, Madam wouldn't have to worry to this extent. Just as he was thinking about this, the door was pushed open. The young man had a skateboard under his left arm, and his right hand was fiddling with his wet hair. His whole body was covered with the smell of rain, and his handsome face was revealed. "Mom, why did you come back so early today?" He Honghua was happy to see her daughter now. She held Fujio's hand and said, "Jio, our company is saved." Fujio already knew what was going on. She wouldn't make a move if it wasn't for her own benefit. She only curled up her thin lips and smiled evilly. "Did those investors call you to increase their stakes?" He Honghua was happy and her voice became louder. "Not only the investors, even the media called to promote our company." "Wait, how did you know that the investors wanted to increase their stakes?" "Of course I'll pay attention to Mom." Fujio freed one hand to grab He Honghua's huge waist and brought her to the sofa. Hearing this, He Honghua was so touched that she didn't think about the whole thing. Her rough hands couldn't bear to let go of her daughter. "Jio, when Mom makes money this time, I'll hand over the company to you. Those things aren't hard to do. Don't worry, Mom will watch you from the side and won't let others laugh at you. With Mom here, of course I'm not worried." Fujio chuckled and put her arm around the old lady's shoulder. "Let's talk about the media first. How are they going to promote the company?" He Honghua didn't realize that her daughter was trying to get information out of her. She tugged at her curly hair in annoyance. "They said they wanted to interview a gaming god called Spade Z, but we don't have such a person in our company. We can't just make someone appear out of thin air." "Huh?" Fujio smiled, looking a little flirtatious. "Mom is right. You didn't let it get to your head." The unexpected compliment made He Honghua blush. How could their daughter be so handsome? Chapter 100. He Honghua's eyes lit up when she heard that. "Jio, how did you come up with this gimmick? Our company can make a lot of money this way." Fujio didn't say anything and just smiled faintly. Soon He Honghua thought of something and frowned again. "But we don't have Spade Z in our company. We can't lie to people like this, right?" "Mom, how can this be a lie?" Fujio patted He Honghua's shoulder and said in a low voice, "I watched the live broadcast today. Since Spade Z said that he belongs to our company, then he will definitely appear in the gaming contest. Otherwise his reputation will be ruined. So don't worry about this. He will definitely appear and you can deal with the media boldly. When He Honghua heard her daughter's suggestion, she skipped over to return the call to her friend from the media. Qin Xiaodong looked at his young master's electrifying eyes and said seriously, "Young master, why do I feel that you were intentionally flirting with madam? What are you trying to hide?" Xiaodong. Fu Jiu stretched out her arm and put it on her little boy servant's shoulder. "Haven't you realized this after watching so many movies? The more you know, the faster you die. I've been playing games all night and I'm tired. Go make me a sandwich and pour me a glass of wine, and I'll consider not killing you." Qin Xiaodong's hair stood up when his young master put him on the shoulder. "I'll go now." Young master, don't try to turn me gay." Turn him gay? Fu Jiu raised her pretty eyebrows and thought that even if she wanted to turn him gay, she would find Almighty Qin. Why would she find a little kid? Fu Jiu blew the hair on her forehead and took out her phone that was vibrating. It was a WeChat message from Qin Imo. A few short words with the same cold tone. "It's raining outside. Don't hang out at the internet cafe if you have nothing to do." Fu Jiu wiped her hair with a towel and looked at He Honghua, who was on the phone. If her mother knew that she had found such a godson for her, how would she react? "Brother Imo, I'm home." After saying that, in order to prove that she wasn't lying, Fu Jiu took a selfie and sent it over. Qin Imo looked at the youngster's face, which was still dripping with water. It was unbelievably tender, as though even the hair on her face was sticking to it. Her beautiful and exquisite collarbone was revealed. Qin Mo's fingers paused. He placed his phone down and stared at the traffic outside the floor-to-ceiling window. After a few seconds of silence, he picked up the phone again. His tone was firm and commanding. "I told you, don't send me such pictures again. Go to sleep now, I'll pick you up from school tomorrow." Fu Jiu was confused again. What was wrong with her picture? Isn't it quite clear? No one could guess the Almighty's thoughts. However, there was one thing that had to be put on the agenda. Since she had already announced that she was going to make San suffer in the esports competition, she had to recruit enough people. Fu Jiu rested her chin on her fingers and suddenly smiled. "Let's go to the game during class tomorrow. We can use the parts that the Almighty bought tonight." When He Honghua came back from the phone call, her daughter was gone. Only the red wine was gone, and Qin Xiaodong's sandwich was still in the same place. "Where's Jiu?" she asked. Chapter 101. The next day Fu Jiu yawned and went to school. She spent the whole night assembling her laptop, and her shoulders were almost broken. This time she didn't skateboard. She took the bus and it was 2 stops away. Along the way she saw many girls in the same school uniform taking pictures of her. Fu Jiu smiled at them with a lollipop in her mouth. When someone leaned over, she held the girl's hand like a gentleman. When she got off the bus, all the girls blushed and followed Fu Jiu excitedly. Only when the young man entered the classroom did they let out a long sigh of regret. However, the classroom wasn't as pleasant. As soon as Fu Jiu stepped in, she saw a mess on the floor. Shui Yaoyao was squatting on the floor. Her long hair hung down and covered her face, but it wasn't hard to see how depressed she was. Even when her fingers touched the textbook, she slightly tightened her grip. "Damn fatty, you should know your place when you're so ugly. Stay away from me," the boy said as he kicked the book in Shui Yaoyao's hand. "Still picking it up? Let me tell you, I've been tolerating you fat pig for long enough. If you still want to stay in class, go tell the homeroom teacher and ask him to change your desk." "What the hell is this? Poor and ugly, it's an insult to my eyes." Shui Yaoyao's fingers tightened again, and the force almost sank into her palm. Fu Jiu knew that she was holding it in because she couldn't cry. Once she cried, she would lose completely. A group of people were watching the show, especially some girls who were covering their faint smiles, and their picky eyes swept over Shui Yaoyao's body again and again. "You're right. If she's expelled from school, she shouldn't come back. Although she was wrongly accused of being a thief, it's true that her family is poor. Also, the weather is cold and she doesn't change her clothes. She only has one set of school uniform and she doesn't even wash it. Her long hair smells like vegetables. Does she not even take a shower?" "Stop talking, it's disgusting." Mocking laughter was always more painful than punches. Shui Yaoyao's head hung even lower, almost to the point where it was buried in the ground. The boy standing next to her wanted to kick again, but he was kicked to the side. There was a loud bang. Before the boy could cry out in pain, Fu Jiu reached out and pulled Shui Yaoyao into her arms. She held the back of Shui Yaoyao's head with her left hand and pressed it into her own chest. She grabbed his uniform with her right hand and smiled evilly. A man who hits a woman is worse than a piece of trash. You can either shut up now or come with me to the sports field at the back. Let's see whose fist is harder. Fujio's kick just now had already made him unable to stand, and with the way this person was looking at him, the boy only felt goosebumps all over his body, and he took a step back submissively. Fujio raised her eyebrows and let go of his collar. She turned sideways and hooked her black school bag back. Her school uniform was half unbuttoned and she said faintly, "You don't want to be next to Shui Yaoyao, do you?" The boy opened his mouth with a pale face. Who would like to be next to such a woman? He didn't dare to call her fat pig anymore. He was afraid that Fujio would kick him to death again. Why didn't he realize that this gay was so fierce when he fought? Chapter 102. Everyone in the classroom was shocked when they saw Fujio hugging Shui Yaoyao. Some of the girls had their eyes wide open as they looked at this scene in disbelief. Shui Yaoyao herself froze from the beginning. She wanted to say thank you, but she was afraid that if she opened her mouth she wouldn't be able to stop crying. But Fujio acted like nothing had happened. She sat down on the chair, put her left hand on Shui Yaoyao's back casually and smiled lightly. The buns from last time were delicious. Do you have any more today? Shui Yaoyao didn't say anything. She nodded and shook her head. She looked down and big drops of tears fell onto the textbook one after another. She didn't understand why she didn't cry when she was bullied like that. But the youngster's most ordinary greeting could make her cry uncontrollably. Shui Yaoyao thought that maybe the hug just now was too warm, so warm that she could turn a blind eye to the humiliation. No more. Fujio touched her belly regretfully. Then she moved her left hand and a lollipop appeared in front of Shui Yaoyao. She had a smile on her face. Take it, girls need to eat sweets. The surrounding students looked at the interaction between the two with envy and jealousy. The prettiest girl in the class couldn't figure out what was so good about that fat pig that Fujio would treat him like this. Is Fujio really in love with that fat pig? Not necessarily. Didn't they say that Fujio is gay? Look at his attitude towards girls. Does he look like a gay? He is obviously straight. But he liked handsome Jiang and said that he wanted to keep Almighty Qin. How do you explain that? I don't care. Anyway, my Highness Jiao is straight now. In order to protect Fujio's reputation, the school had set up a small group of fans. They affectionately called Fujio Highness Jiao. Because every time their highness appeared, that evil look, that attitude of oppressing scumbags, that bright and translucent eyes, that calm demeanor in front of the media, was very much like the ancient princes who held great power. As a result, the phrase His Highness the Ninth quickly appeared. Perhaps it was because birds of a feather flocked together, but everyone who liked Fujio had very good values. For example, they had long wanted to stand up for what happened today, but their individual power was limited. Plus, that boy was not someone to be messed with in school, and he had connections with people outside the school. Just when the three of them were hesitating whether to stand up for him or not, they saw His Highness Jiao kick him. That action was extremely cool and the kick was really satisfying. From that moment on, they decided that regardless of whether His Highness Jiao was straight or gay, they would protect this young man. Fujio had no idea that she had gained 3 fans because of her actions. After assembling her laptop for a whole day yesterday, she just wanted to lie on her desk and sleep. It could be said that Fujio slept through the first 2 classes. With Shui Yaoyao covering for her, the teacher didn't notice. Jiang Feiyang, who was sitting on the other side, was a little absent-minded. He always wanted to look forward in the morning. He never thought that the weakling who once said that he liked him would actually be willing to not be his desk mate anymore. Chapter 103. When Fujio woke up again, it was already the 3rd period between classes. She didn't know what Jiang Feiyang was thinking, but he actually walked to her side, knocked on her desk and asked in a low voice, "Are you really going to sit here?" Fujio looked at him with interest, and her left hand supported her chin lazily. Her gaze made Jiang Feiyang sober up immediately. What was he doing? Was he trying to make this little weakling go back? He was crazy. But young Master Jiang still bit the bullet and said, "Actually, you don't have to do this. The teacher will rearrange the seats next Monday and let Shui Yaoyao sit with the girls. I think it's not bad here." Fujio smiled. At least I don't have to worry about being reported in class. Jiang Feiyang knew that he was talking about him and his face turned pale. He felt that this little weakling was completely unreasonable. He had already given him a way out, but he didn't want to. "Do whatever you want." Jiang Feiyang threw down this sentence and went back to his seat. His eyes were still filled with anger, and the girls who liked him didn't understand what was wrong with him. Shui Yaoyao also raised her head. Will I be a bad influence on you? Influence? Fu Jiu took out the modified English textbook from the desk and curled up her lips. I'm the last student, so why should I be afraid of being influenced? You are better at studying than me, especially in physics. Is that really for humans to learn? This wasn't the first time Fu Jiu complained about physics, and it was obvious how much she hated this subject. Shui Yaoyao looked at the silver-haired young man sitting next to her with thin lips. Because he had just woken up, there were still a few strands of hair on top of his head. They were messy and a bit casual, as if they could grow a pair of ears. He was so handsome that it made people think that he was shamelessly cute. Shui Yaoyao had never been as happy as she was now. Shui Yaoyao really liked Fu Jiu, and it wasn't the kind of love between a man and a woman. She knew that she didn't deserve the young man with her looks, and she wanted to repay him from the bottom of her heart. Even if he didn't need it, she wanted to make the young man feel comfortable. In the future, if you have any questions about physics, I can. Before Shui Yaoyao could finish, the phone next to Fu Jiu's hand rang. It wasn't a ringtone but a vibration. No matter what, the school didn't allow students to bring their mobile phones, but rules were rules. Not many people would not bring their mobile phones. Fu Jiu gestured for him to wait for a moment and then swiped the screen open. It was a WeChat message from Qin Mo. His voice was cold and indifferent, and he sounded like an abstinencio. I'll be near school at noon. Come out, I'll take you out for lunch. Socializing? I'm not going, I'll take a stroll in the game later. Brother Mo. I'm really still a student. Fu Jiu always felt that going to school wasn't that important in Almighty Qin's eyes. How could a straight-A student like him, who was guaranteed a spot in a prestigious university before even graduating, understand the pain of being a slacker? Sigh. Qin Mo paused for a moment, then used the tone of an older brother to remind her again, pay attention in class. Fu Jiu laughed when she heard that. She tilted her head and sent a voice message over. Don't worry, I'm usually very well behaved. My new desk mate is planning to tutor me in the future. Go ahead, see you after school. He thought that this matter was over. After all, there had been no news from the other side for a few minutes. Just when Fu Jiu was planning to dig out more members of the team, her phone vibrated again. So your grades are so bad that you need to tutor to reach the standard. Fu Jiu. Chapter 104. The main thing was that after saying this, Boss Qin didn't have any intention of restraining himself. Then he added, what rank did you get last time? Fu Jiu's fingers paused. She really didn't want to answer this question because it was a huge blow to her. She almost suspected that the Almighty said that on purpose. With the Almighty's black-bellied personality, it was very possible. She really couldn't reply to such a man. Fu Jiu decisively put her phone in the desk. Not long after, he was shocked again. There are more than 50 people in your class. You should be in the top 40, right? Fu Jiu still didn't say anything. She was sure that the Almighty did it on purpose. Top 45? Fu Jiu's handsome face fell even more. When he felt that it was about time, the man slowly replied, don't tell me you're in the last 3. Instead of being tortured by the Almighty again and again, she might as well admit it herself. Fu Jiu sent 2 words over gloomily, fall 1. Qin Mo's beautiful tone was raised with an obvious smile. So that's how it is. Fu Jiu. What else could it be? Almighty, you asked so many questions because you already knew that I was a slacker. 11:05 p.m. In a 5-star hotel, the table was full of dishes. It was a bit early for ordinary people to eat, but not for business. Chatting with the young man while the dishes were being served really increased one's appetite. Qin Mo looked at the ellipses on the screen, and the young man's depressed face appeared in his mind again. He couldn't help but smile. Secretary Liang stood beside him and saw his CEO's sudden smile. He couldn't help but shiver. When did CEO Qin ever smile during a business meeting? And CEO Qin didn't have the habit of holding his phone. He secretly nodded and saw Fu Jiu's name on the screen. At this moment, Secretary Liang's heart was in a mess. A mess that couldn't be described. The person who came for business was also from an aristocratic family, but he was more than 10 years older than Qin Mo. Seeing him smile, he raised his eyebrows. When they were almost done with the project, Qin Mo asked indifferently, I heard that CEO Xiao has a brother who is in high school. CEO Xiao was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect the powerful young Master Qin to talk about such private matters. He smiled and said, yes, I do have a brother. How is his study? Qin Imo picked up the glass of red wine and took a sip. His handsome face didn't change at all, as if he was just having a casual chat. Xiao Xiao smiled bitterly. To be honest, it's not good. I have to attend a parent-teacher conference on his behalf tomorrow. Parent-teacher meeting? Qin Imo repeated these 3 words. A pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes deepened. No one knew what he was thinking. President Xiao continued, but I can't blame him. Even I can't understand the current high school textbooks. Those questions are too difficult. I'm planning to find a private tutor to tutor him. Qin Imo didn't reply. President Xiao thought that he was unhappy, but he knew when to stop. Look at me, I talk a lot when I talk about my brother. It's nothing. I have a younger brother too. I understand that feeling. Qin Mo's expression was still calm. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit, looking noble and luxurious. What he said almost made Secretary Liang spit out the red wine in his mouth. Xiao Zhao's son is his biological brother, but yours isn't. Chapter 105. After Fu Jiao sent the last ellipsis, she turned on her phone's hotspot and put up her English textbook. Everyone thought that she was reading a book, including the teacher in class. Only Shui Yaoyao, who was sitting next to her, knew that she wasn't reading a book, but a small notebook. She looked at the exquisite little book of the knife and axe divine skill and covered her mouth in shock. She was afraid that she would scream and expose Fu Jiao's secret to the teacher. Who would have thought that what was supposed to be an English textbook would turn out to be a computer? How did he do it? Shui Yaoyao looked at the young man's perfect side profile. She wasn't stupid. She knew that this kind of notebook couldn't be bought, and it didn't even have a logo on it. Anyone with basic computer science would know that this was a top-notch notebook. Why did he have a notebook like this? He was just an ordinary young man. He used to be an arrogant and despotic nouveau riche. Was all this just a disguise? Shui Yaoyao looked at that pair of slender hands moving beautifully on the keyboard. She also played games, so she knew that the more powerful a person was, the more silent his typing was. And, when the young man was typing, he didn't look down at all. He supported his chin with one hand and looked at the podium with his beautiful eyes, as if he wasn't typing but listening to the class. How powerful must he be to be able to do this? Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists, and an indescribable excitement flowed through her blood. As a poor person, she knew that Director Zhang's incident wasn't something that could be exposed so easily. She knew how deep Director Zhang's connections were in the school. How did such a private message come about? Who could have triggered such a powerful network effect in just one night? There must be someone behind all of this. Perhaps Chief Zhang would hate this pusher. But as the victims, they could go back to school and clear her name as a thief, all because of this person. That was the hero she wanted to thank the most. More and more voices were distorted because they didn't have enough connections or money. But at that time Shui Yaoyao saw a lot of hope. She had been wondering who that person was, and even the police had no clue. Now she finally knew who that person was. It turned out that he was sitting right next to her, protecting her time and time again. Shui Yaoyao put down her trembling right hand, grabbed the carbon pen and wrote a note. Because she was too excited, her beautiful handwriting was a little crooked. You're the one who did Director Zhang, aren't you? Fu Jiao was still multitasking as she searched for team members in the game. The English textbook shell in her hand was the result of her staying up all night last night. She had ordered the shell online, and it took a lot of effort to install and run it. A piece of paper suddenly appeared in front of her. The words on the paper were blurred by her tears, but they were even clearer. Fu Jiao paused and turned to look at Shui Yaoyao. Seeing this, Shui Yaoyao tore another piece of paper and quickly wrote, I don't have any other intentions and I won't tell anyone. I just want to. Chapter 106. When Shui Yaoyao saw that word again, she suddenly froze. Guessing was one thing, but confirming it was another. She suddenly remembered that day when the young man faced countless media with determination, as if he was wearing armor, and said with bright eyes, because we all believe that justice may be late, but it will never be absent. So that was it. So that was how it had always been. Shui Yaoyao covered her mouth with reddened eyes. She wanted to cry, but not because she was sad but because she was very happy. She was poor and ugly and she had a lot of fat on her body. She had been bullied a lot in school. Some of them weren't even bullying but just a look of disdain or a sneer, but it was enough to destroy a person's heart. Shui Yaoyao was glad that she could meet such a person. He had a face and a heart that was more handsome than anyone else. Even the way he looked at her was full of warmth. I won't tell anyone. Not only would she not tell anyone, but she would also keep it a secret for the young man. Fujio smiled and wrote 3 words over. I know. Shui Yaoyao paused and wrote another sentence. I saw that you were looking for someone in the game just now. I know how to play hero too. Do you want me to help you? Fujio's eyes lit up when she heard that Shui Yaoyao was playing hero. She didn't ask her how good she was, but directly handed her notebook over. It was Shui Yaoyao's first time playing games in class. After she got over the mental burden, she was able to play the game smoothly. The small laptop was surprisingly easy to use. She didn't pause at all on the keyboard and the graphics were smooth. It was even faster than some high-end computers. In fact, Shui Yaoyao didn't use high-end computers because she was too fat. Other than games, she didn't have any other entertainment options. Speaking of which, it was sad. Another reason was that she could afford such a pastime. She could only spend 6 yuan on a computer in an internet cafe for 3 hours. It wasn't even enough to buy a cup of Starbucks for other students. Therefore Shui Yaoyao wasn't weak. In fact, she was even more skilled than the average player. Fujio watched from the side and her beautiful eyebrows raised a little. Before she could finish typing, she wrote a string of words on the note. I have a job here that pays well. Are you interested in helping me? Shui Yaoyao didn't even ask what the job was. She immediately wrote, I'm willing. After answering, she realized that she had been too enthusiastic. She was afraid that Fujio would hate her, so she retracted her hand. Let's talk about work. I play games every day and I use my spare time. I saw your operation just now, but it's still a little flawed. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, our goal is to dominate this year's esports selection contest, so you have to plan your studies well. Don't fail when the time comes and you won't be able to qualify for the contest. Shui Yaoyao looked at the 3 words fail, and coughed lightly. Then she wrote back, actually, Your Highness Jiao, don't you think you should pay more attention to your studies? Chapter 107. This was indeed something she should pay attention to. Fujio raised her hand and pushed back the silver hair on her forehead. Don't worry, I'll only fail physics this time. Shui Yaoyao reminded the young man, failing physics is still a failure. In order to prevent young people from being too addicted to games, the rule of the esports selection contest is that you have to pass every subject. Fujio paused. The rules are like this? Don't you just need to pass? No. Because Shui Yaoyao was a fan of League of Legends, she more or less paid attention to the rules of esports competitions. Your Highness Jiao, you have to work hard. At this moment, Fujio realized that what she needed to do the most was not to buy a paperback, but to take out her physics textbook and play with it dozens of times. The key was that she had no interest in physics. Should I hire a tutor? Shui Yaoyao wrote on the note. Fujio looked at that line of words and suddenly felt a little melancholy. But it was still good to find a team member, so she casually wrote, Tell me your phone number. Shui Yaoyao blushed. Just as she replied in a low voice, I don't have a phone. The English teacher suddenly appeared beside her. Fujio reacted quickly. She pulled her left hand back and replaced the notebook with a real English textbook. She also swept the other notes to the side. Only the one he had just written was caught by the English teacher. The English teacher looked at the words on the note and frowned. She asked Shui Yaoyao, What's going on? Shui Yaoyao clenched her fists and was about to speak. She heard the young man chuckle in her ear, Teacher Chin, I wrote this note to her. The English teacher didn't expect that Fujio would ask for Shui Yaoyao's phone number. She didn't know what to say, so she pushed up her glasses. Ahem, Fujio, pay attention in class. You've made a lot of progress recently. You're a good seedling. Since you're still a student, you should put more effort into your studies. Don't mistake your affection for Shui Yaoyao as affection. This sentence contained too much information, and all the students in the class looked at Fujio in shock. What does that mean? Fujio confessed to Shui Yaoyao? Isn't this a little too incompatible? Could it be that Fujio liked that kind of guy? Some girls couldn't accept it, and Jiang Feiyang clenched his fists even tighter. He really couldn't think of what Fujio liked about that girl. It would have been fine if she was pretty, but it just had to be like that. Shui Yaoyao wanted to explain, but Fujio winked at her with her left eye, looking devilishly handsome. She knew that the youth allowed everyone to misunderstand him in order to protect her. After all, if others found out that she was the one who took the initiative to pass notes, she would only suffer more rumors and slanders in school. She and the young man were people from 2 different worlds. Shui Yaoyao had always known this, so she didn't dare to ask for anything. Just like her and that person, even though she was now his stepsister, they were still worlds apart in school. With the English teacher's warning, Fujio didn't log into the game again. She thought of something and took out her phone to send Chin Imo a WeChat message. "Brother Imo, can I bring a classmate to play tennis today?" No matter how domineering she was, Fujio still had manners in her bones. Since the other party was taking her there were some things she had to ask in advance. Chin Imo replied faintly, "Sure." Chapter 108. Shui Yaoyao didn't agree to her idol's invitation at first. To be honest, she had never played tennis in a professional tennis court before, and the expenses there were probably not low. Plus, she didn't have a good figure, so she would be treated as an anomaly in such an occasion. The young man probably saw through her concerns, so he added with a light smile, "Don't worry, I won't let you play on the court. You just need to hold my computer and play by the side. The main thing is that I can correct your small flaws in the game." It turned out that the young man already knew that she didn't have a cell phone. But he was so gentle that he didn't say anything. Even after school, the young man walked beside her with a black school bag on one shoulder. He still looked so handsome. It was drizzling outside. Fujio didn't take an umbrella. After her silver hair was wet, her face looked even more handsome and delicate. And the black earring on her ear, coupled with her faint smile, was really a weapon to instantly seduce girls. "Fujio, can you wait?" Suddenly, a girl stood in front of Fujio with a blushing face. She was pushed by two friends behind her and her cheeks were a little hot. "There's a new movie that's playing today. Can I go watch it with you?" Fujio smiled and said, "I'm busy today, sorry." It was not a good feeling to be rejected. Even though she knew that the other party might not accept, but that girl still lowered her head and her hand that was holding the movie tickets trembled a little. Then go do what you need to do." Fujio looked at her white fingertips, raised her left hand and tucked her long hair behind her ear. She smiled slightly. "It's raining today, so it's better to go back early. Don't catch a cold." Instantly, the three girls were boiling with excitement. The girl whose hair had been pinned felt an unprecedented warmth. This was their Highness Gio. Even when he was rejecting someone, he did it so gently. When Chin Imo rolled down the window, he saw such a scene. He was still sitting in the back of the car with his legs crossed. On top of him was a business tablet, and it looked like he had just finished a video conference. He originally wanted to light a cigarette. His left hand was still playing with the limited edition silver lighter, but after glancing at the youth outside the car, he paused slightly. His deep eyes sank and even his eyes were filled with a lot of cold air. "President Chin, do we need to drive a little further?" The driver thought it was his problem, so he asked cautiously. Chin Imo put the lighter away with a smack, pushed open the car door and walked towards the youngster after saying, "No need." The autumn rain in the north was usually very cold, so Chin Imo was dressed differently today. He was wearing a black double-breasted windbreaker over a well-ironed suit, and there was a circle of pure white fox fur around the collar of the windbreaker. He looked domineering and noble in every way. His handsome and flawless face attracted countless gazes in just a few seconds. But before people could call out his name, he reached out and grabbed the back of the youngster's uniform collar. He smiled coldly. "Have you forgotten what I told you?" Chapter 109. Wronged? Chin Imo arched a brow as he looked at the youngster in front of him. That face was obviously very likable, but it was too cunning. He tapped his right hand with his finger. "Didn't you pluck someone's hair with this claw just now?" Fujio was still smiling. Raindrops slid down her silver hair and landed on her face. "That's not flirting." Chin Imo glanced at him, took the black umbrella that the driver had opened for him, and held it over the youngster's head. He ignored the shrill screams around them and said faintly, "Get in the car first." Fujio knew that his anger had subsided. She glanced sideways at Shui Yaoyao, opened the back door and gestured for her to get in. Chin Imo frowned. "Is this the person you sent a WeChat message to bring to the stadium?" "Yes." Fujio pushed Shui Yaoyao's back. Shui Yaoyao, on the other hand, felt an unprecedented pressure. His Highness Gio had never said that the person he wanted to play tennis with was Almighty Chin. Moreover, although Almighty Chin's gaze towards her wasn't impolite, it was as cold as an icy rain, which could easily make people shiver. "Why don't you go in?" Fujio smiled lightly. "Go in. I told Brother Mo that we can bring people in." Shui Yaoyao swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She didn't even dare to imagine how the people around her would look at her when she approached the car. To be honest, the students at the side were shocked speechless. Not to mention that Almighty Qin's appearance was a bit sudden. Just looking at that chubby girl being able to get so close to him and possibly get into Almighty Qin's car, they felt a burst of jealousy and hatred. How many generations of good fortune did that woman accumulate? Shui Yaoyao's scalp went numb. She hesitated for a long time but still couldn't move her leg. Just as Fu Jiu was about to push him in, someone grabbed her collar again. It was Qin Mo. He had an umbrella in one hand and the other hand was wearing a black glove. He looked a little like an ancient devil. He grabbed Fu Jiu with the other hand and his face was handsome and noble. Don't you know the rules? Let the girls sit in the front and the two of us sit in the back. Fu Jiu thought to herself, I'm a woman too. But he wouldn't say it like that. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he opened the door in a gentlemanly manner. Only then did Shui Yaoyao have the courage to step out, mainly because she felt that Almighty Qin's gaze wasn't as cold as before. After the three of them got in the car, the commotion outside was cut off. On a rainy day like this, there would always be towels in the top-end commercial vehicles. Qin Mo casually took a towel and threw it at the youngster's head, freeing one hand to wipe his head with the towel. Shui Yaoyao was stunned when she saw this scene in the rearview mirror. She didn't know how to react and could only sit there stiffly. In fact, the driver's mood was also very complicated. After all, this was the first time he had seen his young master get out of the car on a rainy day. Getting out of the car was one thing, but after getting in the car, the first thing he wiped wasn't his own hand, but another person's head. This doesn't conform to the young master's usual cleanliness. No, that's not right. It should be said that he actually allowed a drenched handsome young man to sit next to him. Wouldn't he usually kick him out of the car? Chapter 110. When Qin Mo heard this, he turned his head, his lips brushing past the youngster's wet hair. His fingers froze and his lips felt a little itchy. His voice turned cold. Take the towel and wipe yourself. After saying this, he took the business tablet back to his hand, plugged in his headphones, and had a cold expression on his face as if he was going to continue the meeting. Fu Jiu rubbed her hair, not understanding what was wrong with her brother Mo. His emotions came out of nowhere. She hadn't started flirting yet. But seeing that the Almighty was in a meeting, Fu Jiu didn't disturb him. She kept the towel on her head and didn't take it off. She unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Only a minute had passed, and Fu Jiu thought that the Almighty had forgotten about her. Who knew that when she looked up, the man sitting next to her took the towel off her head and frowned. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? Fu Jiu laughed. So Brother Mo is concerned about me. In front of your classmates I won't kick you out. If you have time, read more books. One of Qin Mo's ears was still wearing a black earring. He lifted his eyelids faintly, his thin lips forming a faint smile. At least don't be last. Fu Jiu calmed down at the mention of her results. She held her lollipop in her mouth the whole time and didn't say a word. She didn't even try to play with Qin Mo's hair. CEO Qin was very satisfied with this. He even asked the driver to stop the car and buy some drinks for him and his classmates. After all, he was the younger brother that she recognized. She would slowly correct her bad habit of flirting with others. She had to give her younger brother some face in front of outsiders. This was CEO Qin's most intuitive thought. Especially when he glanced sideways and saw the young man blowing at the steam in the cup with his head lowered. The white steam surged up and touched his silver hair, and he felt that what he did was right. Just like his cat, it would be more obedient if it was given food. Qin Mo crossed his legs and opened the business magazine. His left hand subconsciously caressed the youngster's head, and his thin lips curved up. He seemed to be in a good mood. After Fu Jiu was patted on the head, she tilted her head to look at the Almighty, then turned back and continued to drink. It was indeed comfortable to drink something warm on a rainy day. Shui Yaoyao held the piping hot caramel macchiato in her hands. She knew very well that she had benefited from His Highness Jiu, but she really didn't expect that His Highness Jiu and Almighty Qin would have such a good relationship. Although she saw His Highness Jiu get on Almighty Qin's car last time, not many people knew why he got on, because they were still guessing if Almighty Qin wanted to teach His Highness Jiu a lesson. After all, what Highness Jiu did back then was too. Almighty Qin probably couldn't stand him. Moreover, the whole school was saying that His Highness Jiu was gay and had a crush on Almighty Qin. But looking at the interaction between the two of them, Highness Jiu wasn't the one who took the initiative. On the contrary, Almighty Qin seemed to treat Highness Jiu very well. No, she shouldn't think like that. Shui Yaoyao shook her head. The relationship between Almighty Qin and Highness Jiu was probably just a friendship between two men. When the driver saw this, his fingers slipped and the cup of coffee he was supposed to pass to his young master fell out of the car. Qin Imo glanced over at them. The driver immediately said, "Young master, I'll go buy another cup." Chapter 111. Fu Jiu, who was called out, raised her head. Her silver hair was slightly curled up, giving off a cat's ear feeling. It was so cute. The driver froze when he heard Qin Mo's words. He even suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Their family's young master, the young master who had severe mysophobia and looked at everyone as if they were germs, actually said that he wanted to drink the same cup of coffee with someone else. If Madam and Boss knew about this, they would definitely look at young master in surprise. This was not his usual style at all. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and curled her lips. She didn't care. "Brother Imo, do you want to drink it now? I just blew on it, it shouldn't be hot anymore." This young man. The driver immediately felt a headache coming on. A normal person shouldn't reply like that, right? Qin Imo didn't say anything. Instead, he held Fu Jiu's hand, turned his head, and pressed his lips directly onto the takeaway cup. His handsome and abstinent side profile looked very handsome in the misty rain, especially since he was wearing a black suit. Fu Jiu's eyes lit up. Fu Jiu was also a natural and energetic pretty boy. Her school uniform's collar brushed past Qin Mo's shoulder, and the scene was very beautiful. Shui Yaoyao felt that the two most handsome men in the world were together. It was a feast for the eyes. But Shui Yaoyao glanced at the rearview mirror, feeling conflicted. Was she the only one who thought that sharing a cup of coffee with him was an indirect kiss? It's a little sweet. When Qin Imo spoke, his breath was very close. Fu Jiu took another sip and licked the water droplets on her lower lip with the tip of her tongue. A little. It must be because of the lollipop I ate just now. It tastes like chocolate. Qin Imo stared at the youngster's face that was inches away from his. Only then did he realize that the distance between them was a little too close. The fluff on the youngster's face was reflected in his eyes once again. Those light-colored lips that were perfect for kissing were moist and tempting. Qin Imo frowned and retracted his gaze. Then he tilted his head and looked out of the car window with his deep eyes. He raised his eyes and met the driver's gaze. His voice deepened and he spoke in his usual commanding tone, "Drive." "Yes, young master." The driver also felt that he couldn't stop anymore. This was the first time he saw his young master being so close to someone. Even those in the military compound had never been treated like this by the young master. Of course, Qin Imo knew what the driver was thinking, but he didn't have to tell him. Treating a friend was different from treating a brother. When dealing with his younger brother, he would try his best to give in to him. Even if there were times Almighty Qin still wanted this guy to stay away from him so that he wouldn't be flirting with him all the time. Fu Jiu blinked and looked at the Almighty's expression. She cupped her chin with her left hand and smiled wickedly. Brother Imo was indeed vulnerable to flirting. But soon Fu Jiu wasn't that happy anymore. Anyone who had been to a proper tennis court would know that the temperature inside was neither too high nor too low. There would be specialized people who would hand towels and tea to the players. Similarly, players had to change into sportswear and wear knee pads and other professional equipment before the coach would allow them to play. This was also to prevent people from straining their muscles during the game. Wearing knee pads was fine, but going into the men's clothing department to change into sportswear. Fu Jiu, words for the readers. When you're outside, give 7 boys a small theater. Qin Imo sneered. Classmate Shui, don't you think you're redundant? Fu Jiu. Chapter 112. It was really inconvenient for Fu Jiu. With one hand in her pocket, she paused and looked sideways at Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao actually didn't want to change her clothes, mainly because of her figure. She probably couldn't fit into the clothes here. However, Shui Yaoyao still underestimated the influence of Qin Mo's name in the 3 northeastern provinces. In Jianghu City, any business like this would be more or less owned by the Qin Corporation. So here they were all treated like VIPs. The receptionist standing next to them was very pretty, and she was wearing a professional suit. She said to her, "Miss Shui, we have prepared your sportswear. Please come this way." After that, the receptionist bowed to Qin Imo and left with her people. It was Shui Yaoyao's first time in a place like this, so she was a bit reserved, so she didn't notice anything wrong with Fu Jiu. Other than the receptionist, only Fu Jiu and Qin Imo were left in the luxuriously decorated hall. The men's locker room was not far from their left. Fujio was still thinking about what excuse she could use. Chinamo had already put one arm around her neck and brought her into the room. His left hand didn't forget to grab the sportswear from the receptionist's hands. Seo Chin had a habit of never letting anyone serve him when he entered a place like this. Even if it was just changing clothes, he would let the receptionists wait outside. Even though they were treated like VIPs, there was only one locker room. Fujio looked around as soon as she entered the room. Except for the open cabinet, which served as a little bit of cover, the rest of the place was empty. If she changed her clothes here, her gender would be exposed in less than 3 seconds. In fact, when Chinamo said he was going to play basketball, Fujio was already prepared for physical contact. Today she wrapped a circle of bandages around her chest and wore a pure white hurdle vest. But even so, she couldn't strip naked in front of a god, right? Fujio hugged the black sportswear that the man gave her. Her beautiful eyebrows furrowed and even her eyes darkened. Chinamo had already given his windbreaker to the receptionist when he came in, so he only had his suit on. He unbuttoned his shirt with one hand and turned his head to look at Fujio. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he couldn't hide his handsome asceticism. What? Do you want me to help you take it off? Fujio knew that the Almighty was picking on her first gay meetup. It seemed like it was impossible to use the same trick again. The current Almighty was fundamentally different from the man she had first met, who still knew how to do gay meetup tutorials. The only difference was that he really treated her as his little brother. Still not moving? With a tug of his long fingers, he threw the shirt into the wardrobe. He took out a lighter and lit a cigarette. As the smoke rose, only his perfect upper body could be seen. Every inch of his abdominal muscles was sexy. He was only wearing a pair of black handmade trousers. The tailored trousers made his legs look especially slender. The black belt around his waist had been untied and pinned to the side. It was sexy and lethal. Chapter 113. Fujio smiled and looked up at Chinamo. Her eyes were too beautiful. Then she tiptoed and moved her thin lips close to Chinmo's left ear. She said in a seductive voice, "Brother Imo, if you want to see me undress so badly, I will think that you are interested in me." Chinmo's eyes darkened and he pulled the young man away. Fujio lost her balance and almost hit the clothes rack behind her. Chinmo reached out in time and pulled the young man back. His face was obviously a little cold, but he also had a faint smile on his face. "Where did you learn these words from?" Fujio saw that the man didn't want to let go of her. The fragrant cigarette smell lingered in her nose, but she wasn't in a hurry. She said lazily, "I went to nightclubs a lot and I learned it. Brother Imo, you know my reputation." "You had a reputation?" Chinmo's eyes darkened. He stuffed the unfinished cigarette into the young man's mouth, reached out his hand, and patted the little face that made him angry and hateful. His voice was still light, but it was irresistible. "Get over there and change your clothes. Next time you talk in my ear, I will tear you apart." Fujio believed in the Almighty's ability to do what he said, especially when it came to disciplining her. As the Almighty's little brother, there were a lot of things she had to be careful of. But fortunately, after the Almighty pushed her away, he seemed to dislike her approaching. He changed his clothes faster, as if he was saying, "Hurry up and get over here." From start to finish, the Almighty was cold and aloof, but his face was indeed handsome. Even when he was wearing sportswear, he still looked like the main characters in comics, handsome and noble beyond belief. Fujio looked at the back of that person walking out and secretly let out a sigh of relief. She walked to her clothes, threw her school jacket aside, and then bent down to take it off. Fujio took off her clothes in a handsome and fast way. But what she didn't expect was that when she took the sportswear and was about to put it on, there was a click. The door to the changing room was opened. The man leaned elegantly against the door frame and looked at her calmly. He raised his brows. "Is this why you didn't want to change your clothes just now? Is it because you're too thin?" Jinwan raised her eyebrows. "Is this the reason why you didn't want to change your clothes just now?" Fujio was extremely glad that she hadn't closed the wardrobe just now. The half-open door was just enough to cover her chest area. Realizing that the man was walking towards her, Fujio quickly put the top over her head and pulled it up to her waist. The man walked to her side, pulled her over with one hand, combed her messy hair, and looked at her with deep eyes. "What are you panicking about?" Fujio lowered her eyes and deliberately lowered her voice. "I'm afraid that Brother Imo will laugh at me if he sees me. My body isn't as good as yours. It's shriveled, too pale, and I don't even have abs." Hearing the youngster's words, Qin Mo's fingers paused. When he was the youngster's age, he seemed to be very mindful of his own figure. No wonder this guy had been throwing a tantrum since the beginning and refused to take off his clothes. So it was the rebellious side of puberty at work. This was something Qin Mo could understand. In his opinion, the youngster was good in all aspects except for flirting. It was okay to be a little rebellious, and this little rebellious was related to the youngster's self-esteem. As an older brother, he should give the youngster more privacy. Chapter 114. If Secretary Liang knew what Qin Mo was thinking right now, he would be glad that his CEO finally realized that he wasn't related to Qin Mo by blood. But this kind of awareness seemed to be more like a younger brother complex. Qin Mo didn't think that he was leaning towards the young man at all. He looked at Fu Jiu with his deep eyes and said in a calm voice, "You're not manly at all. Come out and run a few more laps later." As he said that, he turned around and played with the black wristband with his slender fingers. His handsome face was cold as usual. "Change, I don't want to watch." "Fu Jiu, Almighty, can't you just wait outside?" Forget it, it was better for the Almighty to stay in front of her. He was too meticulous, too black-bellied, and too familiar with his tricks. If he wasn't careful, people would fall into his trap. When Fu Jiu was a hacker, she had never met such a difficult person to deal with. If the police were all like the Almighty, she really did think a lot before doing things. But the Almighty seemed to be amenable to coaxing but not coercion. As long as she wavered a little, it seemed that the Almighty would really love her like a little brother. Fu Jiu looked at the man's tall and straight back and slowly curled up her lips. After changing, she didn't have to worry anymore. She had a bandage on her chest and a jacket, so she didn't have to worry about anything else. She directly put her hand on Qin Mo's shoulder from behind and acted like a good little brother. "Brother Mo, give in to me later. I can't control the ball well." Qin Mo held back for a long time before he slapped the young man's hand down. The Almighty told himself coldly that the young man was in the rebellious phase of adolescence. Any resistance to him might cause some damage to his soul. But the young man was too close, and when that familiar, clean and sweet smell came over, he always wanted to pry open the young man's mouth to see how much candy he had eaten. At this time, Shui Yaoyao was already waiting outside the court with a cup of tea in her hand. In the middle of the coffee table was a very beautiful big fruit plate. Coming to this kind of place was not to play tennis but to enjoy life. Apart from the green grass outside, the temperature inside was adjusted. The brown sofa was very comfortable to lean on, and there was a faint scent of cologne in the air. Shui Yaoyao was still being reserved. Her legs were too thick and she always wanted to hide them. But when she raised her head and saw the intimate posture of the two, she actually forgot all about being reserved. She just watched in a daze as the young man smiled at her and then turned his head to whisper into Almighty Qin's ear. The most surprising thing was that Almighty Qin actually curved his lips. Then he reached out and pinched the young man's neck. "Don't bargain with me. 30 minutes per match, not a second less." Fu Jiu's handsome face fell and she was a little depressed. "Can't I be handsome? Where's the brother Khan? Your body isn't even worth looking at and you call yourself handsome?" Qin Mo took the racket that the receptionist passed to him and pressed it into the youngster's arms. In a casual tone he said, "Play well, don't think of slacking off." The receptionist didn't expect young Master Qin to give his racket to someone else. He looked at Fu Jiu in surprise. Fu Jiu was smart. She could tell from the receptionist's eyes that the racket wasn't provided by the tennis court. It was the Almighty's private property. Chapter 115. Fu Jiu paused, looked up, and set her eyes on the man not far away. He was picking out a racket provided by the court. His slender hands were wrapped in pure black gloves, and he looked quite professional in his professional badminton attire. When he lowered his head, his long and thick eyelashes formed a dark shadow, making him look careless, like a popular star shooting a TV series. If Almighty Qin's current appearance was put on a live broadcast platform, his popularity would probably go up another level. Qin Feng probably noticed the young man's gaze, so he suddenly looked up and looked at Fu Jiu indifferently. "What are you up to now?" Fu Jiu put the racket back and revealed her handsome canine teeth. She smiled brightly. "Nothing, I just think Brother Mo is too handsome, so I want to take a few more glances." Shui Yaoyao was very conflicted as she listened on the side. Why did she feel like His Highness Jiu was flirting with Almighty Qin? Two men were playing tennis together, but Shui Yaoyao felt like they were showing off their love. But those two people were indeed a good match. Shui Yaoyao held her teacup and looked at the court enviously. Fu Jiu met her gaze and smiled lightly. She walked over with her racket and pulled out her notebook from her bag. She leaned over and said to her, "Log in and play 2 rounds first. I'll talk to you about the problem during the break." Okay. Shui Yaoyao didn't expect that the young man would still think of her at this time. She felt like she was being taken care of, and her face turned red. Fu Jiu's eyes swept over the fruit platter on the coffee table. She picked up a piece of watermelon and put it in her mouth. Her voice was gentle. "You can eat any fruit you want, don't be shy." "Okay." Shui Yaoyao nodded hard. She looked at the young man's face with eyes full of worship. When Qin Imo saw this scene on the court, he bounced the racket in his left hand a few times, and his dark eyes deepened. When Fu Jiu walked over again, she saw that the Almighty's face was a lot colder. Could it be that the game was about to start, so the Almighty's murderous aura was rising? Kickoff. Qin Imo left 2 words for the receptionist beside him before he stood tall and straight in front of the net. Fu Jiu's eyes turned serious. The young man bent his knees and his side profile was clean and handsome. His silver hair fell to the side of his ears, and he was wearing a pair of black earrings. He smashed the ball hard. Qin Imo calmly observed the direction in which the ball was flying. Then he turned his body sideways and with a beautiful posture, he gripped his racket tightly and aimed it at the white ball. Fu Jiu's forehead was instantly hit. He rubbed his face with the side of his hand. His face was in so much pain that it looked pitiful. "Brother Imo, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Hit me in the face? Was she really invited to play badminton? He wasn't here to take revenge on her." Qin Imo looked at the youngster, his eyes dimming. "Since you are here to play, focus on playing. Don't always think about flirting with girls." "Since when did I always think about flirting with girls?" Fu Jiu muttered, feeling a little wronged. Qin Mo's eyes swept over the youngster's fluffy head, and in the end he couldn't overcome the surging sense of guilt in his heart. He turned his head to look at the receptionist, and his voice wasn't very happy. "Go get the ice." "Ah? Yes." The receptionist still didn't understand what young Master Qin wanted the ice for. Chapter 116. Fu Jiu was stunned. She looked at the man's face in front of her and curled up her lips into a smile. "It's not that serious." The receptionist on the side also felt that young Master Qin wasn't treating his little brother, but a porcelain doll. Young Master Qin used to play even harder, but he had never covered someone's forehead in person. Qin Mo's slender fingers tightened, and his voice was very indifferent. "You'll hurt more next time if you keep shooting." As he spoke, he pinched the youngster's chin and twisted it lightly with his fingertips. "Turn your face over." Fu Jiu didn't feel anything. She held her head high and let Qin Imo cover her forehead for about a minute. Shui Yaoyao, who was still playing games, moved uncomfortably. She felt like she was unnecessary sitting there. It was better for her not to look at the court. It was better for her to reduce her presence. After covering her forehead, Qin Imo served the ball himself. He used a lot less force than before. Fu Jiu was even more handsome than usual when she played, especially when she didn't stop on the court. She kept running back and forth, and her amazing jumping ability matched with her face. She was so youthful that it was enviable. Both of them had good skills, especially Qin Imo. He just stood there and walked back and forth in front of the court without changing his expression. He swung his racket casually, and his amazing skills matched with his perfect, streamlined body, causing the people on the other court to exclaim, "This is professional level, right? Who's the one playing? You don't know him? You should have heard of the Qin family, right?" "Nonsense. I'm not asking about young Master Qin. I'm asking about the youngster he's playing with. Could it be one of the young masters from the military compound?" This kind of court was big and privacy was important. Qin Imo and his friends were treated like VIPs. When the people on the other side looked here, they could only see the figure but not the face. "Hey, young Master Fu, come over and see if you can see it clearly." Fu Shiming was short, so the adults who were doing business with his father couldn't see him clearly, much less Fu Shiming. He fiddled with the tennis racket in his hand and said, "I've seen young Master Qin a few times. Aside from the few people in the military compound, there's no one else around him. There's no need to guess the other party's identity." When those people heard this, they immediately laughed and complimented, "That's true, but I haven't seen young Master Qin in real life. Young Master Fu is indeed amazing." "That's nothing." Fu Shiming raised his chin indifferently. He was quite arrogant. Fu Zhongyi was elated to hear his son being praised. My son doesn't like to talk much, but he's actually very good at games. Young Master Qin plays games too, so we got to know each other. Since we know each other, why don't we go over and say hello? When those people heard this, they were tempted. Fu Ximing furrowed his brows. Young Master Qin doesn't like to be disturbed when he's playing. In the future. He sounded disappointed, but at least there was still hope. I'll have to rely on young Master Fu's recommendation. Fu Ximing grunted in acknowledgement and glanced in that direction again. In fact, he was thinking if he should find a chance to talk to young Master Qin when he was free. The reason why he came here to play tennis was because he heard that young Master Qin often came here to exercise. He had indeed met young Master Qin a few times before, but it was always at the entrance and they didn't talk much. Chapter 117. After the game, even the counselor who was watching from the side couldn't help but want to praise the beautiful game. Almighty Qin won, of course. Fu Jio's stamina couldn't keep up. In the second half of the match, there was a thin layer of sweat on her fair forehead, and even her silver hair was wet. She put it to her ear, raised her hand to wipe it and smiled. Brother Imo, I'm going to take a break. We'll play the second match later. Qin Imo glanced at him and handed his thermos to the young man. Fu Jio was indeed thirsty. People who had just finished exercising had to drink water. She took the thermos and drank several mouthfuls. Once again the receptionist was shocked. He turned his head silently and looked at the person next to him. Young Master Qin was really different today. He wasn't a clean freak at all. Fu Jio drank 2 mouthfuls and realized that Qin Imo didn't drink any water either, so she handed the thermos back. The receptionist thought, if you give something to young Master Qin, he will definitely look at you coldly and slap you in the face. But the man held the young man's hand and drank 2 mouthfuls casually. Then he turned his head and ordered them, pick up the ball. Oh yes. No wonder the receptionists were a little slow today. This scene was too impactful. Fu Jio saw that the Almighty didn't seem to be thirsty, so she came to Shui Yaoyao with the thermos and took a piece of watermelon in her mouth. Then she tilted her head and looked at the screen. She put one hand behind Shui Yaoyao and the other on the mouse. You don't need to be so fast for your profession. Besides the keyboard, use the mouse. When the enemy attacks, dodge first and then grab the ball. Shui Yaoyao watched the young man easily use the ultimate move on the screen, and her eyes were full of shock. She had always wanted to ask His Highness Jiao, who was so good at playing, what was his name in the game. But before she could open her mouth, she saw Almighty Qin sitting in front of them with his legs crossed. He didn't sweat at all, which made people feel that this man was naturally unattainable. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His whole body exuded elegance and luxury. But his eyes were so cold that no one dared to look at them directly. Shui Yaoyao didn't understand how Highness Jiao dared to put his arm around this man's shoulder. Anyway, she was scared to death. Almighty Qin's gaze on her hand was too oppressive. Shui Yaoyao couldn't help but look down. Only then did she realize that Almighty Qin wasn't looking at her, but at His Highness Jiao's hand on the back of her hand. Did you see it clearly? The young man's voice was still ringing in her ears, still gentle. Hit me like this from now on. Shui Yaoyao braced herself and replied, okay. He pulled Fu Jio over and said in a low voice, I asked you to come here to play tennis, not to teach. I even told you not to be half-hearted. Did you forget it so quickly? Mamach? Fu Jio looked at Qin Imo and said in a low voice. Fu Jio touched her nose. Shui Yaoyao wanted to help the young man out. Your Highness Jiao, I know what you just said. You guys continue fighting, I'll pack my things and leave first. Leave first? Fu Jio raised her eyebrows. It's not convenient to take a car here. We will send you back after we finish the fight. Right, Brother Imo? Although Qin Imo didn't like the way the young man flirted with girls, he still had the basic manners, so he replied with a faint, Chapter 118. No need. Shui Yaoyao quickly waved her hands. When she said this, she unconsciously looked in Qin Mo's direction. Almighty Qin probably didn't want her to play tennis with His Highness Jiao. Don't ask her why she felt this way. This was her first reaction. But Fu Jio misunderstood her look. Or do you prefer to play with Brother Imo? You pick one of us. Hearing that, Qin Imo frowned his thick eyebrows without changing his expression. Fu Jio had already stood up with a smile. Who should I pick? Shui Yaoyao followed her and said, then His Highness Jiao should choose you. She really didn't dare to choose Almighty Qin. His inherent elegance always made her feel a little breathless. Looks like I'm more charming than Brother Mo. Fujio's words were directed at Qin Mo. She smiled, revealing her sharp white canine teeth. Her silver hair hadn't completely dried yet. It was really hard to hate her. But Qin Mo's eyes swept over the girl standing next to the young man, and his fingers paused. Wasn't his little brother being too nice to Shui Yaoyao? He hadn't known Fujio for a long time. Whether it was the young man outside the game or the Spade Z in the game, they weren't that easy to get close to. Qin Mo always thought that he was the one that the young man treated specially. But now it seemed that he was even nicer to Shui Yaoyao. Thinking of this, Qin Mo couldn't help but take another look at the chubby Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao felt a chill on the back of her neck, and she was too embarrassed to turn around. To be honest, she was really too fat. She was different from when the young man came on the court. Her legs were chubby, and they would definitely shake when she ran, which wasn't pretty at all. No one liked to expose their shortcomings in front of their idol, but it was unrealistic to go back and play games. Almighty Qin obviously didn't want to see them playing on the computer. Fujio was right next to her, and she also saw her scruples. While she was choosing a racket, she chuckled and said, "I've been wanting to ask, why do you call me Highness Gio?" This is because the girls in school like you. Not that kind of like, but that kind of like. Shui Yaoyao was afraid that she couldn't explain clearly, so her face was still red. Anyway, it's your fangirls. We gave you this nickname together because you look like the ancient princes, evil and domineering. Fujio found this explanation quite interesting. Crown Prince? The girl's thoughts were still very cute. Then let this prince teach you how to play tennis. A lot of girls aren't good at this. In order to make Shui Yaoyao look less awkward, Fujio smiled and blinked her left eye. Then she reached over and put her hand on Shui Yaoyao's hand. She had a handsome and clean face. Not only was her posture handsome, but her voice was also very pleasant. Exert force with your fingers. When you're playing, try to lower your body as much as possible. Keep your eyes level with the racket and the ball you want to hit. Use your ankles to drive your whole body just like this. With that said, Fujio held Shui Yaoyao's hand and pushed the racket upwards. Her movements were very cool, and her silver hair flew past Shui Yaoyao's ear. Chapter 119. Shui Yaoyao's heart was beating erratically. She never dared to imagine that she would be so close to the young man one day. His Highness Jio's unique gentleness could really melt people. Can you? The melodious voice rang in her ears again, and when she turned her head, she saw the young man's smile. Even the beauties on the tennis court couldn't help but look over, their eyes full of envy. I want such a handsome guy to teach me tennis too. That's such a sweet smile. Who is he? I don't know, it's my first time seeing him. The beauties couldn't help but stop what they were doing. They all looked at Fujio through the net, their eyes burning. Only in the semi-transparent lounge, the temperature was low. The receptionist standing next to Qin Mo didn't even dare to turn his head. It wasn't an illusion. The coldness emitted from young Master Qin could almost freeze people's blood. What the hell was going on? Qin Mo looked at the court with one hand supporting his chin. His slender fingers and black gloves rested on the back of the chair. His long and deep eyes were extremely cold, and even his voice was like a flower blooming in the North Pole. Every word he said was cold and bone-chilling. Call them back. After all, he came from the military compound, and his ruthlessness was never hidden. Rest after 30 minutes. He doesn't understand this, but neither do you? As he said this, he raised his head carelessly and glanced at the receptionist. That pair of eyes was so deep that it made people's scalps go numb. The receptionist didn't dare to refute. Although young Master Qin always played for more than 2 hours before stopping, now that young Master Qin said to rest after 30 minutes, they had to rest. Young Master Gio. The receptionist actually felt that it was a little disharmonious to interrupt the young man's teaching at this time, but what could he do? He didn't dare to disobey young Master Qin's words. Fujio glanced sideways. Miss, you look very hot. You didn't rest enough just now, right? The receptionist was good at talking and he tried to find an excuse without blinking. I haven't exercised before and it's not good for my body if I exercise for too long. Let's clean the court first and you two can play later? If you want to fight again, then fight with young Master Qin. Don't leave young Master Qin here to teach girls again. Otherwise, I'll have to find another excuse. Fujio found it strange that the stadium needed to be cleaned after only half an hour of playing. But since the receptionist brought it up, she couldn't say anything more. She took Shui Yaoyao to the lounge. The moment she looked up, she saw that the man's expression was a little colder, but he still looked dignified. His fingers slid across her homemade book and the other hand held the coffee. He looked like a king. This book is not bad. Of course, Fujio accepted all the compliments. You bought a good hard drive and it runs very fast. I'll use it to play with Brother Imo in the future. MMH, Chin Imo replied and didn't continue the topic. Instead, he turned to look at Shui Yaoyao and casually twirled the black gloves on his hands. Miss Shui, how did you get to know my brother Jiao? I see that you two have a good relationship. Ninth brother? Shui Yaoyao was still a little confused by this title, but she still had to answer Almighty Qin's question, even if she had to bite the bullet. His Highness Jiao and I are now desk mates. His Highness Jiao is very nice and takes good care of me. Chapter 120. Shui Yaoyao didn't understand why Almighty Qin would ask that, so she just nodded vaguely. Fujio was still drinking water. When she raised her head, her fair neck looked especially long and slender. Qin Imo glanced at the youngster, and he happened to see Fujio's movement. His deep eyes swept over that smooth area, and he couldn't help but reach out and pull her over. You have so much free time after school that you can flirt with girls freely. You don't need to study anymore, right? What do you mean by picking up girls freely? Fujio coughed. Brother Imo, don't wrongly accuse me. Yaoyao is my teammate and my physics tutor. My grades will be in her hands in the future. Just studying? Qin Imo felt that this question needed to be answered. He looked sideways at that fair and handsome face and he said faintly, don't bother girls with tutoring, especially Miss Shui. She should be very busy. Aye. Shui Yaoyao wanted to say that she wasn't busy, but when she met Almighty Qin's cold eyes, she swallowed her words. Fujio really hadn't considered this problem. Shui Yaoyao's family wasn't very well off, and playing games would definitely take up a lot of her time. She probably had to cook for herself and she also needed to tutor her in physics. It seemed like she didn't have much time. It's okay, I can hire a physics tutor. Fujio smiled at Shui Yaoyao, obviously trying to help her out of this situation. Qin Imo looked at them from the side and his eyes darkened. Do you feel proud when outsiders find out that you failed physics? Fujio. Brother Imo, don't be so sharp with your words. This is how friendships are broken. Fujio was a bit listless when it came to grades, especially physics. I have no choice. I have to pass every subject in the esports selection contest. At this point, Fujio smiled again. She leaned a little closer to Qin Imo with a devilish and flirtatious look. How about I bribe Brother Imo, and you let me in through the back door? Qin Imo glanced at the young man. 10 million and I'll let you pass. Fujio's handsome face fell. Brother, give me 10 million and let me hire a tutor. The coldness in Qin Mo's eyes dissipated a little when he saw the youngster's expression. I'll tutor you in physics from now on. Shui Yaoyao, receptionist, why did they feel that young Master Qin, Almighty Qin, had gone one round just to say this? Fujio was also stunned. Brother Imo, aren't you usually busier? I still have time to tutor a slacker like you. Qin Imo stood up as he spoke, his large hand caressing the youngster's fluffy head. In the future, leave such embarrassing matters to me, understand? Fujio, so the Almighty thought that her little brother was an embarrassment, which was why he wanted to teach her physics. Suddenly he felt that studying was very stressful. What? Are you unwilling? Qin Imo studied the youngster's face and sneered. He didn't need to hide his evil aura anymore. He enunciated each word coldly. Do you want me to throw you out? Fujio laughed. Then let me make it clear first. When you teach me, you are not allowed to say that I have a low IQ. Qin Imo smiled as well, looking very handsome. He reached out and pinched the youngster's chin, the faint scent of tobacco lingering on his fingertips. Do you have intelligence? Fujio. Chapter 121. Then the two of them played a round of tennis. This time, Shui Yaoyao consciously treated herself as a wallpaper. The match between Qin Imo and Fujio was worth watching. But for Fu Ximing, who wanted to meet Qin Imo by chance, it was a torturous wait. He was the young master of the Fu family, and there were so many people coming and going at the door. He stood there like a receptionist, which was really embarrassing. 15 minutes ago, he had sent someone to find young Master Qin and said that he wanted to play a game of tennis with him. Logically speaking, such a request would not be rejected. But the reply he got was that young Master Qin was busy, and he was not even allowed to enter the lounge. 15 minutes, he had been standing there for a full 15 minutes. Most importantly, young Master Qin did not give him a negative answer. If he waited any longer, what would he do when those people who were doing business with the Fu family came out? If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have boasted when he first came out. Fu Ximing gripped the racket in his hand and smiled at the bodyguard in black. Can you help me ask again? When will young Master Qin come out? The bodyguard in black was polite, so he did as he was told. But after Qin Imo heard the question, he still said indifferently, let him wait. Fu Jiao saw that the bodyguard in black had come in 4 times in such a short period of time. She twisted the black bandage on her wrist and turned her head. What's the matter? Nothing. Qin Imo saw that the young man was sweating, so he turned his face over and said faintly, did that Fu Ximing bully you last time? Fu Jiao raised her eyebrows. Last time? Bullied her? That illegitimate son couldn't even bully her. But since the Almighty asked, she had to nod. Of course she had to nod her head. Yes, that's right. Qin Imo flicked his racket and said something incomprehensible. Fu Jiao was confused and didn't understand what the Almighty was talking about. But it didn't affect her handsomeness as she smiled at Qin Imo. Almighty Qin felt that there was nothing wrong with what he did. Since someone bullied his little brother, as the big brother, he had to stand up for his little brother. Fu Ximing didn't know when he had provoked a man. He stood outside for 40 minutes and his handsome face was full of embarrassment. Some guests even regarded him as an assistant coach and waved him over to pick up the ball. This scene was witnessed by Fu Zhongyi and the others who just came out. Fu Ximing couldn't take it anymore. He glared at the customer and said, "You're the one who picked up the ball." The customer was also annoyed. "Aren't you here to pick up the ball? What are you doing standing here?" Fu Ximing didn't know what to say. He didn't even enter the door. He just used brute force to rush outside. "Young Master Fu, what's wrong? Where is young Master Qin?" The group of people asked anxiously. Fu Ximing had nowhere to vent his anger, so he directly said, "Scram." These people were not as rich as his family anyway. The faces of the elders immediately changed. Fu Zhongyi still wanted to explain. "This child?" The guest sneered. "Huh? Young Master Qin? Is young Master Qin someone he can see whenever he wants? He has been standing outside for more than half an hour. It's obvious that he hasn't given up after being rejected by young Master Qin. I've seen too many people like him. He thinks that after playing tennis twice he can suck up to young Master Qin, but he still got angry. Stop pretending to be rich." Just this sentence put Fu Zhongyi in an extremely awkward situation. After the bodyguard in black saw this scene, he walked in again and whispered something in Qin Mo's ear. Qin Mo's expression didn't even change. He held the racket in his hand and said in a calm voice, "Got it." Chapter 122. A game of tennis didn't end until it was dark. Qin Mo was really busy. As the CEO of the company, he was also the captain of the Supreme Alliance. His calls were bound to come from time to time. Since the Almighty had no time to care about her, Fu Jiao entered the changing room and quickly changed her clothes. She put one hand in her trouser pocket, smiled evilly at the man who was still talking on the phone, and gestured for him to go out first. Qin Mo didn't want Fu Jiao to go out first. He thought that this guy was good at flirting, and if he didn't keep her by his side, she would cause him trouble. However, on second thought, the young man was now in the rebellious stage of adolescence, so he couldn't be too strict with him. Thus, he nodded, but his eyes were still full of warning, meaning nothing more than for him to behave. The person on the other side of the phone didn't know why their president was so quiet. He thought there was something wrong with his report. He said in a trembling voice, "President Qin?" "Continue." Qin Mo put down the racket and walked into the changing room. He held the phone in one hand and bit the zipper of his jersey with his teeth. His other hand exerted force and his posture was ruthless and handsome. Fu Jiao looked back at those smooth lines that were enough to drive women crazy and make men jealous. She then looked back at herself. In the future, she'd better not bring up the topic of comparing size with the Almighty. It felt a little dangerous. The three of them sat in the same car as before. But this time, both the driver and Shui Yaoyao were much more receptive than before. "Send Miss Shui home first." "Yes." The driver drove steadily. But it was hard to enter Shui Yaoyao's house. It was an old residential area next to a vegetable market. Bicycles were everywhere. Not to mention Qin Mo, even the driver rarely came to such a place. Shui Yaoyao was sensible and didn't let them drive too deep. Let's stop here. My house isn't far. I can walk the rest of the way. Thank you, Almighty Qin. Thank you, Your Highness Jiu. Fu Jiu saw her get out of the car, so she followed. Is it really not far? Yes. Shui Yaoyao nodded. Her round face was actually very cute. Your Highness Jiu, don't worry. I will practice the skills you taught me today when I get home. Oh, anything is fine. Fu Jiu smiled. Seeing that she had been a little nervous the whole day, she reached out and flicked her forehead. With me as the captain, we won't lose. Shui Yaoyao covered her forehead with her hand and smiled. Highness Jiu was indeed very gentle. Both of them were wearing school uniforms. Fu Jiu was already very eye-catching, and with such an action, people couldn't help but look back. The youthful atmosphere was very strong, especially in such a lively scene. Qin Mo was still sitting in the back seat with the car window rolled down. His dark eyes were as dark as the cold night, and all his emotions were drowned in them. His hand holding the business tablet paused for a moment, as though he was enduring something. This time he didn't get out of the car. Instead, he waited for the youngster to get into the car before he slowly tidied his sleeves. Cancel today's dinner. Let's go back home. The driver returned to the main family? But there was someone else in the car. Did young master forget to send ninth young master home? Fu Jiu paused a little and raised her eyebrows. What about me? Qin Mo tilted his head and smiled, but he didn't look very happy. He patted the youngster's cheek with his black-gloved right hand. His breath was like the north wind in winter, cold to the bone. Chapter 123. Go home with the Almighty? Fu Jiu thought about it, and there was nothing wrong with that. There should be a lot of good computer parts in the Almighty's house. Okay, after we get there we can visit Brother Mo's room. Fu Jiu said it casually. But after the driver heard what his young master said, he was shocked. Young master was going to bring someone from outside the compound home? This was something that had never happened before. Even when young master was in school, he didn't invite anyone home. Although young master's tone just now didn't sound like an invitation, but like he was looking for trouble. But it was enough to make people feel like it was a dream. The car didn't go fast, and Fu Jiu could see the special signs of the military compound along the way. This kind of place was usually quiet in the middle of the hustle and bustle. Vehicles going in and out had to be checked, and ordinary people couldn't get in at all. Every day there were special armed soldiers standing guard, and they were the most powerful people. In her previous life, it wasn't that she hadn't been to such a place. It was just that at that time she was still the #1 player that all the intelligence agencies wanted to capture. As soon as Qin Mo got out of the car, all the soldiers in military uniforms raised their arms with a whoosh. It really made people feel that this place was different from the outside world. Young master. A middle-aged woman dressed like a servant came up to him. Qin Mo pulled Fu Jiu over with one hand, and his voice was very calm. Auntie Zhang, Fu Jiu, this is my brother. He will come often in the future so you can arrange things accordingly. Auntie Zhang was stunned. She had worked for the Fu family for so long, and since when did young master have a brother? Boss and madam probably didn't know. Fu Jiu still wanted to talk to Auntie Zhang, and that charming and evil smile appeared. But Almighty Qin grabbed her wrist. Don't flirt with people, understand? I'm just saying hello. Qin Mo tightened his grip and his voice was very calm. You can't even say hello, go upstairs. Fu Jiu was sucking on the lollipop and she was a little depressed. Almighty Qin as her brother, was he too strict with her? Qin Mo entered the room, threw his jacket on the sofa, and unbuttoned his shirt with his left hand. He raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man with a domineering and ruthless look. Do you think I'm strict with you? Fu Jiu also sat down and yawned lazily. A little. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's head that was so close to him. Somehow, the coldness in him receded a little, and his entire body was filled with elegance. Let's talk about something men talk about. Fu Jiu? A conversation between men? It wasn't appropriate for her to chat with him. She was not a man. To be honest, Brother Mo, you've got the wrong person. Do you want to fall in love now? Seeing the youngster's listless expression, Qin Mo felt that his tone was too harsh. After all, he shouldn't treat his younger brother like a subordinate, so he added, I'm not against puppy love, but you should focus on your studies now. Fu Jiu was confused. She didn't want to be in a relationship. Stay away from girls in the future. Seeing that the youngster didn't look up, Qin Mo's voice softened. Before falling in love, you should at least pass the test, right? Last place, huh? Fujio couldn't help but raise her arm and place it on the man's shoulder. Her eyes were very beautiful. Brother Mo, why don't we talk about how to be a good brother? Chapter 124. Usually at this time, no one dared to mess with Chinemo. But Fujio was different. In her eyes, nothing was scary. It would be better if you could be a little more tolerant. I haven't thrown you out yet. I'm already being very tolerant. Chinemo glanced at the youngster's hand lightly and his voice was low. Fujio looked at her posture and explained seriously, I'm doing this because I'm close to Brother Mo. I see that there are many people who are close to you, such as Shui Yaoyao. Chinemo sneered. He hadn't expected this guy to have feelings for such a girl. He tugged at his shirt and changed the topic. Are you hungry? Chinemo's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Chinemo. Fujio nodded with a lollipop in her mouth. I've been hungry for a long time. Hearing that, Chinemo glanced at the youngster. But he felt that he was making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a good feeling, not a liking. It was normal to have feelings for people at this age. Too much discipline would indeed attract disgust. Youth was rebellious. Thinking of these words, Chinemo decided to discipline him appropriately and not overdo it. What do you want to eat? Chinemo asked Fujio as he walked to the phone. Fujio thought for a while. Spicy hot pot with more tripe and beef and a plate of vegetables. Chinemo didn't attack the youngster for being a foodie after hearing that. He lowered his eyes and pressed the intercom. Hello, Auntie Zhang, let's eat at home. Prepare some hot pot seasonings, spicy seasonings, and... Fujio looked at the man's handsome and elegant side profile and was a little surprised. She thought they would go out to eat, but she didn't expect to eat at Chin's house. Look around first, I'm going to change. After saying this, Chinemo tugged at his collar as if he was going to walk into his bedroom. Then he thought of something and stopped, asking, Do you want to change too? Of course Fujio wouldn't agree. She didn't want to experience what happened in the changing room again. Brother Mo's clothes are too big for me. Hearing that, Chinemo looked the youngster up and down. He was indeed a little short. But he didn't say this out loud. As a good brother, it was necessary to save some face for his little brother. Unfortunately, Fujio didn't realize that the Almighty was saving her face. After all, Almighty Chin's eyes were too expressive. She wasn't stupid, so she knew what he was thinking. She looked down at herself. She was 173 centimeters. As a girl, she wasn't short at all. Since her master was gone, of course Fujio would walk around. She was especially interested in this man who had almost caught her. After all, she had been free and unfettered in the West for so many years. The police had sent a lot of manpower to lock onto her, but they had yet to find her. They didn't even know whether she was a man or a woman. This time, she was found out partly because she couldn't keep up with the tools she used before. But even so, the Almighty's reasoning ability was inhuman. With Chin with he with he with he, fu with I he with he I fu he fu he with he with he. Chapter 125. On the mainland there weren't many people who could study criminal psychology. What's more, there weren't many who could write annotations in a book. Fujio curled up her thin lips playfully. The Almighty had hidden himself quite well. No wonder they all said that young Master Chin was someone the entire Northeast province couldn't afford to offend. If the police had someone like the Almighty, it would be hard for her to hide herself. Criminal psychology, psychological profiler, and computer expert, Fujio always believed that there were some people in this world who couldn't be compared to them no matter how many times they were reborn. The Almighty might be one of those people. Interested in my book? Chinemo had already changed his clothes. He was wearing a light-colored knitted sweater with a pair of cloth trousers. It made him look much softer, like those male celebrities in Country H at home. His black hair was stuck to his ears and it was slightly damp. His exposed wrists looked especially white. He walked around Fujio's back and put his slender fingers on the book Criminal Psychology she was reading. The light scent of mint mixed with a hint of tobacco fell from the top of Fujio's head. It was very familiar and very pleasant. In that position, when Fujio turned her head back, she saw the man's smooth chin. Fujio thought about his height again. She wasn't short, but the man was a whole head taller than her. No wonder the Almighty looked at her so disdainfully when he walked in. He was so tall that he indeed had the right to disdain her. Chinemo also lowered his eyes. His deep eyes fell on the young man's face, and they seemed to freeze for a moment. Soon he took the book out of her hands and put it back on the shelf. He grabbed the back collar of the young man's school uniform with his other hand and turned his body sideways to ask Fujio. His thin lips were very close to the young man's face, and his breath could hit Fujio's face. "Do I look good?" "Not bad." Fujio smiled lightly, and it was somewhat seductive. "No wonder Brother Mo could locate my range so quickly. Your deduction ability is so strong. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have jumped out so quickly. I would have played a few more rounds with Brother Mo." Chinemo told himself once again that the young man was in his rebellious phase. As an older brother, even if this guy touched his things, he wouldn't. He couldn't break his claws. However, he still had to take care of this child. Chinemo exerted his strength. He didn't care what position the youngster was in and dragged him out. "You can read the extracurricular books later. Let's go eat first." Ever since she met the Almighty, the number of times she was treated like a sack had increased. "Fujio, Brother Mo, let's talk. Don't always drag me around like this. It's affecting my image." "Won't it affect your image to read other people's books?" Chinemo grabbed onto the youngster as though he was lecturing a disobedient cat. Fujio didn't deny it. "I just want to see how powerful the person who caught me is. Brother Mo, what else do you do besides playing games?" "Make money." After Chinemo finished speaking, he pinched the youngster's chin forcefully. "Don't ask so much. If you continue with your nonsense, I'll cook you up and stew you in hot pot." Chapter 126. I don't need to chase after a girlfriend. Women will naturally chase after me. Chinmo's voice was very calm and he lowered his handsome face. Even his breath was on Fujio's lips. "So what you said is not within my consideration. Be good and listen to me. Don't let me break your neck. That's what you need to do, understand?" After saying this, Chinemo let go of the youngster. His back was straight and even seemed to be matter-of-factly. Fujio found it hard to refute what the Almighty said. According to the man's style, he didn't need to worry about finding a girlfriend. In Jianghu City, not only girls who played games worshipped him as a god. Even young ladies who didn't play games couldn't resist the temptation of the Qin family's power and influence. And, even if all these things were thrown out, with the Almighty's figure and looks, even if he went to a nightclub, he would still be a popular cowherd. In the future, she shouldn't attack the Almighty with girlfriends, because she couldn't do it at all. Unlike the Almighty who attacked her grades, every attack was accurate. Thinking of this, Fujio was a little depressed. She was going to comfort herself with hot beef hot pot later. But what she didn't expect was that after she sat down, there was a set of chopsticks and bowls on the table. That seat was placed in front of the man. Fujio looked up at Aunt Zhang with a light smile. That clean and handsome face was full of sunshine. Aunt Zhang didn't dare to make eye contact with this handsome boy. She just kept tilting her head and looking at Chinemo, looking like she wanted to say something but didn't. Seeing this, Fujio knew that the Almighty had ordered her to do something. She didn't beat around the bush and said to Chinemo, "Brother Mo, where are my chopsticks?" The beef in the spicy pot was boiling. At this time she took it out and stuffed a big mouthful into her mouth. Even her lips and teeth were fragrant. Just thinking about it made her feel delicious. Chinemo only lifted his eyes slightly and put a pile of beef into his bowl with his chopsticks. "This brother of mine is so bad, so of course I'll eat it. You watch." "Fujio. Almighty, you can't be so cruel. You won't have any friends, do you know that?" Chinemo glanced at him again, only to see the youngster's handsome face collapse instantly. His beautiful eyes were still looking at him, his silver hair fluttering innocently. This reminded him of the youth's rebellious phase, and he began to reflect on whether he had gone too far. After all, this was the youth's first visit. "Are you craving beef?" Chinemo asked the person opposite him. Fujio held her chin and licked her lower lip with the tip of her tongue, looking devilishly handsome. "Brother Mo, I've been playing tennis with you for so long, I'm hungry. When you were playing tennis with me, how many people did you flirt with? Have you counted?" Chinemo smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I spent a third of my time teaching others." Fujio paused and stood up all of a sudden. She put her arm on the table and leaned over. Her thin lips curled into a smile. "Jealous? Jealous?" Chinmo's body temperature dropped even further. He held the bamboo chopsticks in his hand and used his eyes to signal the youngster to look at the bottom of the pot. You want to become it again? Chapter 127. Chinamo could tell that the young man was listless again. His deep eyes glanced at Fujio's lowered head, and the corner of his mouth lifted. He acted like a big brother. Will you still have puppy love in the future? Fujio shook her head and felt that something was wrong. When did she have puppy love? She was just flirting with a girl. She wanted to look up and explain, but she didn't expect that as soon as she opened her mouth, the man stuffed a mouthful of tender beef into it. After the beef cooled down, it wasn't too hot and it tasted just right. The man was still holding the bamboo chopsticks in his hand, but the other end of the chopsticks was fed to the young man. After seeing this scene, not only Aunt Zhang, who was standing next to them, opened her mouth wide, but even the soldiers standing guard all looked at each other in disbelief. What was going on? Young master he actually knew how to feed people. Aunt Zhang still remembered that when the young master was about 8 years old, he was sitting in the courtyard reading a book. At such a young age, he was already very much like a gentleman. He wore a pure black suit with a fluffy windbreaker over it. He always had a cup of tea by his hand and everyone in the courtyard would turn to look at him. Madame was also very happy at that time, and she wanted to feed the young master a bite of fruit. At first, the young master didn't say anything. He probably thought that Madame was tired of coaxing him. Only then did the young master put down the book calmly and said to his wife with a dignified expression, "Mother, saliva spreads germs more than 10 times faster than normal breathing. It's common sense not to feed other people with your own toothpicks." This scene was still replaying in Aunt Zhang's mind until now. How could a child who was less than 10 years old talk about the spread of germs to his own mother? That kind of scene was really cute and surprising. Later on, whenever Aunt Zhang cooked something, her first thought was whether the food was clean or not. After all, their young master's obsession with cleanliness was real. But when did such a young master feed people with his own chopsticks? Didn't they say germs could spread? Now the young master didn't care about germs? If Madame saw this scene, she would definitely lose her elegance. Fujio didn't think much of it. Nothing was better than having meat to eat. In an instant he tossed aside the question of puppy love. Chinamo looked at the youngster's handsome smile and didn't say anything else. Since he was the younger brother that he recognized, of course he had to raise him carefully. He should have realized his own problem by now. If she was no longer in love, it meant that she was still obedient to him. Compared to those who ran amok all day long, this was much better. Moreover, the way the young man ate was also very appetizing. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like a cat that he raised. As long as it was fed, it would be obedient. He would observe it for a while. After all, it was the rebellious phase of youth. After telling himself this, Chinamo ate a few mouthfuls of beef with the same pair of bamboo chopsticks. This shocked Aunt Zhang once again. She took out the spare pair of bamboo chopsticks in her hand and didn't use it. She felt that this day was like a fantasy from beginning to end. But at the same time, she felt happy for her young master. After all, this was the first time she saw the young master being so close to someone. This kind of young master was finally a little more humane. Chapter 128. After eating the hot pot, Fujio was very satisfied. Just as she was about to say goodbye to the Almighty in a cool manner, she heard the man say slowly, "I've asked someone to prepare the physics books. The tutoring starts today." Fujio had a natural aversion to physics. She supported her chin with her fingers and smiled like a playboy. "Rushing like this will affect your learning efficiency. In less than 7 days, your school's monthly exams will start. Do you think you can pass physics with your poor grades if you don't rush the tutoring?" Chinamo took the pen. His side profile was still handsome, and his voice was calm as if he was just stating a fact. But even so, our Lord Gio still felt like she was being attacked. Fujio couldn't help but ask herself why she chose the Almighty of all people to tutor her. "Get up and follow me upstairs if you're full. Don't dawdle if you're a man." Chinamo was wearing a knitted sweater with one hand in his trouser pocket. He didn't look so oppressive, and because of this, Fujio didn't dare to flirt with him. The Almighty was too pure and refined. If she wasn't careful, she would be swayed by his face. The ancient people said that femme fatale was not groundless. She was bewitched by his face. Focus. The two of them sat in front of the same desk. Apart from the physics textbooks, there were all kinds of data cables, economic magazines, and the tablet that the Almighty often used, as well as psychological analysis tables. Fujio was more interested in the latter. Qin Mo's slender fingers tapped on the desk as he flipped open the physics textbook with a calm expression. Fujio finally pulled her attention back. Almighty Qin's phone vibrated beside him. He didn't look at it immediately. Instead, he looked up and asked Fujio, "What don't you know?" Fujio's fingers were still twirling around her silver hair. After hearing this question, she froze again. Then she looked at Qin Mo seriously and said, "I don't know anything." Qin Mo's hand paused as he turned his head to look at the young man who was still flirting with him and raised his eyebrows. "Are you proud?" Fujio touched her nose. "I didn't say I was proud. Start from the beginning." Qin Mo's fingertips landed on one of the formulas. "Remember this formula first, then." Fujio listened carefully. After all, this was the key to whether she could participate in the esports selection contest. "This isn't right." Unexpectedly, Qin Mo was exceptionally patient when it came to teaching. Perhaps all geniuses were like this. In their eyes, physics and chemistry were just some little tadpoles that they could play around with. During this period, Qin Mo also received 2 calls, both of which were business-related matters. The Almighty was multitasking and handled them beautifully. Someone seemed to have asked, "Boss Qin, what formula are you talking about? Speed? Density?" "I'm going to tutor my brother," Qin Mo replied calmly. The other boss on the other side of the phone was shocked. He turned his head and asked his friend next to him, "When did Co Qin have a younger brother? Which one of them is having a second child? That's not possible, right? Little brother?" His friend was also confused. The boss nodded. "That's right, it's his younger brother. He even said that he was tutoring his younger brother." Friends? Chapter 129. He lowered his head, and his warm breath blew behind Fujio's ear as he spoke. Fujio paused and looked up at the man's eyes, which were as deep as the sea. He said one last sentence, "I'm not going out today." Then he hung up the phone. When his eyelashes lowered, they cast a thick shadow on his face, making his side profile look exceptionally handsome. Fujio tilted her head to avoid this action. Qin Mo didn't say anything else, and his eyes swept over the youngster's face. Write it again. It was really stressful to have such a master. Fujio moved the pen in her hand quickly, like a struggling cockroach. The Almighty's presence was too strong, and no one could compare to him. But there was one good thing about him. The biggest difference between a genius and an ordinary person was that he could quickly get an accurate recognition. Fujio. The youngster looked at him handsomely with his white teeth biting his nose. Qin Mo rubbed his temples with his slender fingers. "Physics is really not suitable for you. Brother Mo, let me tell you something. Don't you think physics is anti-humanity?" Fujio said seriously. Qin Mo sneered. "I think you're the one who's inhumane when you were born." Fujio. "Can't we have a pleasant conversation?" "That's not going to work." Qin Mo turned his fingers and pulled the physics book aside. "At this speed, you won't pass in 7 days." Fujio agreed with the Almighty for the first time. "I think so too. Take out your recent courses." Qin Mo flipped through the magazine. Fujio looked at the physics book in her hand and decided to tell the truth. "You have to ask the teacher." Qin Mo looked sideways at the youngster and said indifferently, "If I were your physics teacher, I'd throw you out right now." She didn't even know where she was studying. Fujio didn't feel guilty and asked curiously, "What do you do if you know the courses?" "Help you predict the questions." The Almighty's careless words made Fujio realize the essential difference between a bad student and a top student. It turned out that a top student could predict the questions. This was unfair to poor students like them. What was the difference between this and knowing the answer before the exam? Fujio was still a little depressed when Qin Mo stood up from his seat. "What are you going to do?" The Almighty decided to be merciful and let her rest? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. "Call your director and ask about his progress." The Almighty didn't say anything, but for some reason Fujio could see the helplessness in his eyes. Fujio thought to herself as she unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. Then she lowered her head to look at the series of formulas. She was so handsome. The physics formula was so ugly. It was obvious that physics was more anti-benevolent. When the director of Jianghu City No. 1 Middle School received Qin Mo's call, he was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. When Qin Mo said the second sentence, he straightened his back. Young Master Qin? Where was the physics in the worst class? I'll call the teacher now. Chapter 130. Director Wang didn't know why young Master Qin suddenly cared about the seating problem, so he just said respectfully, yes. Director Quan, don't you think that it's easy to have a wrong feeling when a man and a woman sit together at the same table? Qin Mo's slender fingers were still holding the mineral water bottle. The reflection of his eyes on the bottle was like the water inside, with a slight coolness. Chief Wang was dumbfounded. Wrong feelings? Puppy love. After Qin Mo said these two words, Director Quan immediately understood what Director Qin meant. Yes, young Master Qin is right. We, the directors, have sat together to discuss this problem. It must be changed to have a man and a woman sit together at the same table. Qin Mo said faintly, Director Quan couldn't hear the emotion in it, so he asked nervously, Young Master Qin, do you know anyone in the bad class? Otherwise, according to young Master Qin's character, he would never ask about people in the school. Qin Mo didn't speak this time, because the young man was looking up at him with his long and narrow eyes that were bright and beautiful. Fujio didn't know what Almighty Qin said, but she was thirsty, so she followed him over. Seeing the man still holding the phone in his hand, she raised her eyebrows. Brother Mo, can't you get the answer? Yes, I can. Qin Mo handed the mineral water to the young man and said faintly to the other side of the phone, That's it for now. Send me the course progress later. Almighty Qin didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did. As a big brother, there were some things that he had to stop and nip at the root. Since the young man liked to flirt with people so much, then he should keep him quiet and not get close to girls. However, it wasn't good for others to know about this, especially the young man. People in the rebellious stage of adolescence probably didn't want to be controlled like this. Thinking of this, Qin Mo glanced at Fujio next to him. Fujio took the mineral water and drank a few mouthfuls. Her white neck and smooth chin always gave people a kind of indescribable beauty. As if aware of Qin Mo's gaze, the young man turned his head. 2 or 3 strands of his silver hair stood up, and he winked at him with his left eye with a slight smile. Qin Mo dragged him back to his seat. Once again he felt that his actions were correct. This guy, he had to make him untouchable. Director Quan was even faster. As soon as he hung up, he called the physics teacher of the lower class. The first thing he asked was, Is there any student with the surname Qin among the students you teach? The physics teacher was also stunned by Director Quan's words. There is a boy whose surname is Qin. What does he look like? What about their living conditions? If they were young Master Qin's relatives, even if they were distant relatives, their families wouldn't be too bad. The physics teacher shook his head. He's a very ordinary student. He's slightly plump and his family sells breakfast. That's not it. If it's not a distant relative, what else could it be? Could it be because of girls? Director Quan seemed to have come to a sudden realization. He sternly warned, in the future, this kind of table arrangement must be for the boys and the girls. Young Master Qin's girlfriend is definitely in there. That's why young Master Qin specifically called him. Chapter 131. Director Quan thought to himself that was before. He didn't know that young Master Qin's girlfriend was among these girls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing even if he was beaten to death. However, he still needed to have some manners when dealing with his subordinates. Teacher Zhang, this isn't being conservative. Director Quan thought of young Master Qin's words as he said, It's true that boys and girls sitting at the same table can stimulate boys' learning attitude, but it is also easy for these children to have a wrong feeling. To prevent puppy love, we should start with the arrangement of tables. Physics teacher. Okay, that's it. Just remember it, Director Quan said seriously. How are your physics studies going recently? What are the key points? Send them to my email. After Qin Mo received the material, he only glanced at it a few times. Then he began to take the pen and mark the key points one by one, circling all the possible questions. What was even more amazing was that he found 4 questions from the big questions and tapped on them with his slender fingers. When you take the monthly test, you will be tested on one of these 4 questions. If you don't know how to do it, just write down the answers. Your memory should be good. Not bad. The young man smiled calmly with a lollipop in his mouth. In fact, every hacker had a good memory, especially when it came to data. If it weren't for the fact that Lord Jiu didn't like physics, she wouldn't have been so miserable and needed the Almighty to tutor her. However, this man was really amazing. He could get so many big questions right. Then, he could just fill in the multiple choice questions in front and he should be able to pass. When Fujio thought of this, she immediately became happy. She showed her white canine teeth. Brother Mo, since you can control the scores, shouldn't we be dismissed now? You can control the scores? Chinamo raised his good-looking eyebrows. Fujio pointed at the test paper. Here, here and here. Altogether it's enough to pass. How can a student taught by me, Chinamo, only get a passing grade? The man's tone was very indifferent, but he was naturally noble and domineering. Fujio, why did she feel that letting a straight-A student like the Almighty teach her physics was simply a trap? A straight-A student's requirement for scores was not on the same level as a slacker like her. She just wanted to pass, not to become a physics enthusiast. But she had no choice. After all, she still needed the Almighty's help. If one were to think about it carefully, there would be benefits to it. Compared to being tortured by all kinds of formulas, she was more used to memorizing the questions. Thinking of this, Fujio began to nibble on her pen again, working hard. When it was almost 10:30, she scratched the back of her head and frowned. It was already so late. Brother Imo, should we call it a day? Chinamo was still in a video conference. He paused it calmly and glanced sideways at the youngster with fluffy silver hair. His gaze was deep. Sure. When Fujio heard this, she stretched her waist lazily and smiled devilishly. She packed her things and was about to leave. It shouldn't be hard to get a taxi home at 10:30. Chapter 132. She was going to wear it? When did she say she was going to wear pajamas? What's with the pajamas? She was the one who was going home. Fujio turned her head and looked at the man's sexy and handsome face. She raised her eyebrows. Brother Imo, I think we have a fundamental problem with our communication. It's too late. Uncle Zhang isn't here. It's not safe for you to go back alone. Qin Mo's voice was very calm. He crossed his long legs and sat back on the sofa. There are so many guest rooms. Just pick one to sleep in. Fujio curled up her lips. It's safe to take a taxi back. You want to take a taxi around here? Chinamo glanced at the young man and threw Fujio's packed school bag back onto the wooden shelf. His indifferent tone was devoid of any emotion. Fortunately, this world sometimes looks at one's looks, not IQ. Fujio. The Almighty was attacking her again. However, the entire Chong and street didn't allow foreign cars to enter, so she really couldn't take a taxi. Fujio picked up her phone and said, Then I'll call my chauffeur to pick me up. Hearing that, Qin Mo's left hand, which was holding the business tablet, paused for a moment. Then, his eyes slowly narrowed, and there was an endless coldness in them. Is it hard for you to sleep here? Fujio stopped dialing. She felt that the Almighty was quite tired after tutoring her for 2 hours. She couldn't just leave after using him. At least she had to find an excuse to leave. If it was Saturday, I would have gone to bed. Today is Thursday and I have to go to school tomorrow. I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep if we change places. Chinamo looked up at the young man. Then he picked up the tablet and stood up. He patted Fujio's left cheek lightly. When did you become a good student who attended classes on time? Don't find such a bluffing excuse. I'll go to the company tomorrow and take you to school on the way. Now go to Aunt Zhang's to get your pajamas. Or do you want to study one more question before going to bed? Fujio, could this alternative of choosing one more question be called an alternative? Her chest was still bandaged. She was afraid that she would be exposed if she slept here. Fujio lowered her eyes, thinking about how to reject him. There was a knock on the door. Young Master, 9th Young Master's pajamas are ready. It was Auntie Zhang. When she heard that the young man was going to stay at the Qin family, she was very surprised. Young Master was becoming more and more humane. He even invited a friend to stay for the night. If Madame knew about such a major change, she would definitely ask for all the information about this 9th Young Master. In fact, even Aunt Zhang herself was curious. Which child of the Fu family was this? How could he get along so well with their young master? Qin Imo retracted his hands from the youngster's face. Come in. Aunt Zhang held the pajamas with both hands, and she looked at Fujio with eyes full of kindness. Young Master Jiu, I see that you are thinner than Young Master, so I brought you the clothes that Young Master wore in middle school. I hope Young Master Jiu doesn't mind. Fujio could reject the Almighty, but if she didn't accept the pajamas now, she would be hurting an old man's heart. He thought about He Honghua, then looked at Aunt Zhang's sparkling eyes. Our Lord Jiu only hesitated for a moment. He was thinking about how to say something so that Aunt Zhang wouldn't be too disappointed. Chapter 133. Almost instantly Fu Jiu saw Aunt Zhang's eyes darken. She quickly reached out and smiled lightly, looking very handsome. How could I not be satisfied? Aunt Zhang's beef hot pot is so delicious, the clothes you prepared must be comfortable to wear. Aunt Zhang's face brightened up again after being praised by the young man. She even blushed inexplicably. Young Master Jiu was too gentle, completely different from their young master. Fu Jiu was planning to continue to confuse him. Qi Nemo interrupted the young man's words and said in a very calm voice, "If you like Aunt Zhang, you can sleep here tonight." Fu Jiu. The Almighty was tricking her again. Young Master Jiu is not staying here tonight? Aunt Zhang looked at the handsome young man in front of her and said rather disappointedly, "I even cooked supper for ninth young master. It's congee with pork and century eggs. Young master doesn't usually eat such things. Now that there's finally someone to eat it." Fu Jiu thought about it carefully. The bathroom and bedroom were both independent, so even if she stayed here as long as they were in different rooms, no one would find out. At this point, if she refused again, the Almighty, who was a master detective who dabbled in psychology, might even suspect her. The main thing was that she couldn't bear to see a woman who was good to her sad, especially a woman like Aunt Zhang. "Of course I'm staying here." Fu Jiu curled her lips like a rich young master. She reached out with her left hand for the pajamas and tucked Aunt Zhang's hair behind her ears. "I love food so much, so how could I let go of Aunt Zhang's homemade century egg and lean meat porridge?" Aunt Zhang heard this and was as happy as a child. "I'll bring it to young Master Jiu right now." "Okay." No one could see the crying face of our Lord Jiu. Staying here meant that she had to sleep the whole night with bandages. Any girl would know that it was torture. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Qi Nemo turned around and continued his video conference. His fluent English was mixed with a few words of French. It was obvious that the conference was not a small one. It must have been hard on the Almighty, who could still find time to use Aunt Zhang to trick her in such a business conference. He was indeed a sly businessman. Fu Jiu complained as she planned to change out of the pajamas while the Almighty was still in the conference. Otherwise, if something like what happened in the locker room happened again, it would be hard for her to deal with it. To prevent the Almighty from tricking her again, Fu Jiu went downstairs to confirm her room with Aunt Zhang and familiarize herself with the environment. Different beds meant a higher degree of safety. There didn't seem to be anything to worry about. With this thought in mind, Fu Jiu took out her modified laptop and entered the game leisurely. As soon as she logged into her account, she saw that someone had sent her over 100 friend requests. Fu Jiu opened the page and it was all, awarding you a slap of pleasure. "Idol, why didn't you add me? Idol hero is too much. How dare he say that I maliciously harass players? I only sent you 100 messages. I was going to send you 1,000. I have money in the game. Idol, didn't you say you were going to carry me through dungeons and send me flying? Why haven't you appeared yet? Idol, why aren't you playing? Have you been kidnapped by the Almighty?" Chapter 134. Fu Jiu put a lollipop in her mouth, put the notebook on her long legs and began to reply, "The Almighty didn't kidnap me, I successfully moved into his house." She couldn't afford to lose on the battlefield. Even though the Almighty did trick her. Live? In the Almighty's house? Award A slap of pleasure sent a horrified emoji. Student Feng didn't expect that his idol would tell him such shocking news as soon as he appeared. Fu Jiu wasn't good at lying, but since she had already bragged, she had to cover it up as much as possible. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for her handsome and domineering image. What's so surprising about that? If I can let him sleep on my bed in the future, will you still jump up in excitement? Sleep. Sleep on the bed. Student Feng's face started to turn red again and he said righteously, "Idol, let's not talk about such a dirty topic or we will be reported." Fu Jiu was amused by the screen, and she was about to raise her hand to type. A tall and slender figure came down from behind her and he said in a deep voice, "If I can let him sleep on my bed in the future." Fu Jiu's back stiffened when she heard that familiar and cold voice. The last thing she regretted in her life was that she didn't lock the door just now. who knew that the Almighty would sneak in while she was playing games. He didn't even make a sound when he walked. Did he think he was a cat? Qin Mo sneered first, then turned his face to look at the young man in front of him. His eyes were as deep as the flowing water in the dark night. So you want to sleep on the same bed with me that much? It seems like there is no need to arrange another guest room for you. It's a waste of space. His expression didn't show any emotion, but it was enough to chill the air around them. Fu Jio coughed lightly. This is a misunderstanding. Really? Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and took the young man's notebook. He put his fingertips on it and he said casually and lazily, "This kind of misunderstanding is really rare. It's the same reason why you got last place in your exams." Fu Jio, every verbal attack was so technical. Seriously? How did the Almighty develop this habit? What's so great about being a top student? In the future, don't add people in the game, even teammates. It will affect your intelligence, Qin Mo said faintly as he operated the youngster's account. Naturally, he kicked awarding you a slap of pleasure out of Spadesy's friend list. Then he moved his mouse and took a screenshot to send to the game staff, specifically complaining about student phone. Fu Jio was caught off guard as she watched the Almighty's fluid movements. She thought that baby phone was going to go crazy this time. Student phone was indeed angry. Was he bullying him for being rich? He had only chatted with his idol for a few days. He hadn't even given him a gold diamond yet. He hadn't done anything. Why did she say that he was harassing her? No, he had to find out who had complained about him. Therefore, after using some connections, he decisively went to privately poke the staff of the game. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't investigated, but now that he did, he was even sadder. The person who reported him was actually his idol himself. Not only did he report me, he even blacklisted me. Why? Student phone was deflated. He sat in front of the computer and felt wronged. He sent a crying emoji to Spadesy. Idol, even if you want to report me, you can't blacklist me. Chapter 135. The man's indifferent voice didn't reveal any emotion. To prevent you from spouting nonsense, you can use my account and I'll use yours before the esports selection contest. Fu Jio smiled lightly. Brother Imo, that's not a good idea. We use different skills in the game. As a hacker, can't you control different skills in the game? He handed the youngster a towel. Don't put my IQ on the same level as yours. Write down your account number and wash your claws. Or do you prefer me to wash them for you? Qin Mo's smile turned colder, his eyes filled with nobility as he handed the youngster a towel. Fu Jio just remembered that she hadn't showered yet. She couldn't care less about comforting baby Feng in the game. She took the bath towel from the Almighty's hand and rushed into the bathroom. This time she didn't forget to lock the door and she even locked it twice. Fu Jio completely believed that the Almighty would rip people's clothes when he was shameless. It was better for her to take the safe route. Thinking of this, Fu Jio raised her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. She was so handsome, but she was still threatened. Sigh. Qin Mo seemed to notice the depression of the young man in the bathroom, so he stood up and walked slowly to the door. He put one hand in the waistband of his khaki pants and he looked very cool. His voice was still indifferent, but it had a natural sense of command. You can use the game currency in the account, but you are not allowed to add people. Game currency? Fu Jio's long and narrow eyes lit up. She turned sideways and opened the door. She put her arms on the side and leaned closer to Qin Mo. Her handsome face was full of evil smile. Brother Mo, don't worry. I have the basic ethics of using an account. For example, he didn't expect the youngster to open the door. Looking at the person in front of him, his silver hair was wet. He freed one hand and pushed Fu Jio back. Take a good shower. Fu Jio didn't know what to say. Instead, she pushed him back. This time, Fu Jio didn't care how cold the Almighty's tone was. She smiled brightly, locked the door again and started to take off her clothes. But when she was halfway through, she still felt a little awkward. She could sense that Qin Mo hadn't left. He was sitting on the sofa outside the bathroom. It seemed like he was still in a meeting. Even without the sound of water, she could still hear him speaking in English and French. It wasn't easy to remove the outer layer, only the inner bandage remained. Fu Jio glanced at herself and sat on the edge of the bathtub. She stretched out her long legs and bent one of them to the left. She turned her face to the side and carefully unwrapped the white cloth in front of her chest bit by bit. As she moved, her silver hair drooped down and hit the attractive side of her face. It made her look very handsome, like a beautiful young man full of vitality. But at this moment, if Qin Mo came in, he would definitely find out that the younger brother he recognized wasn't a younger brother, but a younger sister. Fujio, the legendary gay who liked men. In fact, she was always straight. But no one could have imagined that she was a girl, because he needed to continue using the strip of cloth after he took a shower. He couldn't let it get wet, nor could he tear it. Finally, the last layer was opened by her, and the pair of pure white jade rabbits were about to jump out. There was a sudden knock on the door behind her. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.